Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
First up is review changes to the agenda, if any. I'd like to suggest we reorder a few things. After the Merrill Drive situation, I'd like to suggest that we move up discussing the SLP building window bids, since these guys are here, so they don't have to sit for an hour and a half or whatever it'll probably be before we get to that. So I suggest we move that up. Then I would also suggest that we move road equipment purchase article up to right before we discuss the town meeting warning, since it's related. Then down at the very end of old business, I'd like to add a quick thing about town health officer. Any other changes?
No, we're just gonna discuss articles for the town meeting, okay, and you're gonna do, you wanna do that when?
So we're gonna basically we're gonna talk about the Merrill Drive situation.
First.
Then, first, then we're gonna talk about the building windows.
Okay,
Then we're gonna talk about the road equipment purchase article. Then we're going to discuss and approve the town meeting warning.
okay.
Then we'll move from there. Does that make sense? Okay, any other changes? Nope. Scheduled members of the public, I had not put it down, but I did have Leanne Gilson down to be here, and maybe she'll show up shortly.
If we do that, can we have a limit on the amount of time we discuss that? Per the select board rules, last time we went 43 minutes on the discussion about dogs. I'd like to limit it to 10 or 15 minutes max, rather than going on for 45 minutes about a dog again. Just because. Okay. If anybody doesn't have objection to that, we can set that norm right now.
Okay, let's say we're limiting it to 15 minutes.
I'm good with it.
Okay. Okay, unscheduled members of the public. I'm sorry, refresh me with your guys' names.
Keith Kopoloff.
Chris Logan. I guess, thanks. All right, let's move on to approving the minutes from December 18th. Some of these Dot's already been made aware of. On the first page, Gwen noticed that Joseph Dutton had a French flair to it, or something with an E. Anything else on page 1 that anyone noticed? Moving on to page 2. The only thing I noticed was down at the very bottom, Joseph will reach out to Tom Stats. Isn't Tom Stats' last name spelled S-T-A-A?
Correct.
S?
Yes.
So it's S, 2 A's and 1 T.
That's right.
Good catch.
Anything else on page 2? On page 3, Gwen already pointed out that down towards the end of 7, Tanza. Tanza spelled with an S should be a Z. Did you have something else down?
Yeah, above that, 7F, second paragraph, and second, in the first appropriation request we reviewed, it was suggested that appropriation policy.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see that. You see that?
No, I never read that.
Policy.
Policy.
Appropriation there.
Oh.
That is. The only other thing that I have on page 3 is down under down under 8, or about vital statistics, blah, blah, blah. Towards the end of it, where it says town report as a means to fight cybersecurity, we want to have that be promote cybersecurity,
Oh,
I think, or something like that. Anything else on page 3? Moving on to page 4. The only thing I noticed under regular mail, the very last one, it should be VLCT, not TC. Swapped.
Last sentence in 9, the grant proposal was sent it, and the town is waiting to
Yeah.
see.
And so just that it can be removed.
oh, you can send it in,
Sent.
but
Yeah, or just sent. Okay, anything else on page 4?
On the pay orders, after the number, there's 3 periods. Kind of like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
waiting.
yeah. So on the first pay order,
oh, yeah.
a couple of extra.
I just thought that added it for dramatic flair. I liked it.
Fancy.
Well, it was drama about whether you were gonna second the motion or not.
Yeah, no, I liked it.
You did drag it out, so.
I did, I was like, seconded.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from December 18th as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bruce. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of December 18th as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those are approved. Okay. Then moving on to 6A, Merrill Drive situation. Leanne is here. Thanks for coming. I guess everyone saw the emails about the situation initially, and
I forgot to add something to you, if I could, excuse me. The letter that Peter Meyer sent through, did everybody see
we'll
it?
do it under correspondence. It's in already.
Okay.
I guess if you just want to kind of summarize, and then maybe we'll also ask Dot whether there's been anything further that's bubbled up since the last communication we've had from you guys, as far as whether have the state police become involved, what's the latest?
Okay. We have a gentleman that lives across the street from us in, I guess dilapidated would be a kind word, trailer, or possibly in the, it's like a little blue school bus out behind it. No electricity, no water, no facilities that I'm kind of aware of. He does, I have known him professionally for a few years. Him and most of his family do have some known mental health issues. And it's becoming a bit of a stretch for him. He was injured earlier. He no longer has a vehicle, so he doesn't have a way out. And that caused him to come over to my property and decide it was okay to use an outside outlet that we had to charge his cell phone. We figured that out after the first snowstorm. I have no idea when it started. I'm assuming after his vehicle broke down. Because that's what he was using prior to charge his phone. So we disconnected the power, thinking, okay, we just nipped that in the bud, nothing further. I think it was Christmas Eve, came home. I was inside cooking dinner, my husband was outside sledding with my son. He heard the door open, thought dinner must be ready. Came around to find him exiting our property. We later came back Christmas Day, found his phone plugged in. I wrote actually my husband said overly polite note requesting him not to do that. Plugged his phone back in, it was Christmas and needed to be charged. It's his only form of communication. And since then my husband, who's home more often during the week, during the day than I am, and outside more than I am, has caught him on our property several more times. We've been trying to be polite because we're not sure what could possibly set him off. His mental health appears to be deteriorating as well as his physical health. I'm looking at him, he's probably lost 15 pounds in the last couple months. Did eventually, just this past Monday, I believe it was, contact the state police, who were no help. It was suggested that maybe we just come to an arrangement where he's allowed to use our power, which isn't the point. I mean, it costs pennies to charge a cell phone. It's more of a safety issue than anything else at this point. And I wasn't looking for him to get arrested, I'm looking for him to get some help, get in somewhere, maybe a mental health facility. I don't know, those are in short supply around here. I had reached out, someone had mentioned, oh, unsafe living conditions, maybe the town health officer can do something. So I was just trying to explore every avenue I had.
Dot, have you had any follow-up or
Yeah.
what have you done at this point or thought about
He and
at
I have
this point?
spoken on the phone a couple of times about this, because at first when it came about, I was away for the holidays. And today we tried to actually contact the relative. I left a voicemail message of the man who pays taxes for that property.
Who's the actual legal owner of the property?
Ken Murrow.
The estate of.
Deceased.
Okay, do we know who the,
It's in probate from what I
oh,
understand.
okay, alright.
I remember him.
So,
You remember him walking around town?
when I was reviewing over
His wife?
health officers' roles, it's for public. This is more of a private matter at this time. I mean, we can do you said the state police went over and spoke to
I
him.
don't know if they
Oh.
made contact or
Do you
not, I
know
had
who
no
you-
follow-up.
Do you know who you spoke to on the state
Officer
police?
Stevens, I believe it was.
Okay, because if I call someone, there's so many of them, I need to know who.
Yeah, I wasn't given a case number or any follow-up contact information for him. Our phone conversation honestly left me a little flabbergasted and I neglected to get it.
Alright. But you did say that you saw tire tracks.
Yes, someone had definitely at least been there, whether or not they made contact, I don't know.
Alright, 'cause
Okay, so the state police did, after some contact,
Maybe.
did maybe came
Yeah,
out.
I never
mean, did
heard.
they say that they were going to, or they?
He had stated yes, I don't know
Okay, alright.
if Francis was home, because I found out he has been, hitchhiking into Newfane to check on the status of his vehicle.
Okay.
so-
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so, if I'm with Leanne, you don't wanna have somebody who's living in a unheated, no water, no electric building, but I don't know, it's not a
Right.
rental, so that health officers cover rental properties and that, and there's always a fine line trying to help someone, so I did print out Groundwork Collaborative phone number, they closed at 5. I tried calling I guess it's his brother, Doug.
Doug's his brother, yeah.
First number didn't work, I got a voicemail from the number that Guy gave me. He is the record owner of pays the taxes on it, and I went right to voicemail, and I said I needed to do an inspection. If it's not a voluntary compliance, then we're gonna have to get have to get a search warrant and all that entails as well.
Right.
But it's not a rental.
Right.
This is, but you don't wanna have somebody living in mental health issues, so I'm not
Right.
sure. He's, from what I understand, from what I was able to find out, he's approximately 64 years old. His brother looks much younger. in
Yes,
the picture,
I'm not
yeah.
sure how old he is.
So, and this is the stepson of the gentleman who passed away. So,
Okay.
and they're, yeah. So, and how long has he been living there?
He started living there the summer of 2018. We actually became a little concerned as he was staying there further into winter because we didn't think he had a heat source. At that time, he was using, we found out, a propane heater because I had called and requested a wellness check on him. Tried to help him out, gave him a wood stove to try and hook that up. That he didn't really want help hooking it up, and he was unsuccessful attempting it on his own. Then he left at some point during the winter. He returned late spring or early summer of 19. And I know because he would go over to get his water off of basically a drainage spout in the hill in front of our property. I hope it wasn't drinking water. And then it was fine. I mean, I've dealt with him for years. I never had a problem, but he's been acting different than he has in the years I've known him. He had like all these pairs of shoes that he had in the trailer. I don't think they were his, maybe they were Ken's. It's gotta be 20, 30 pair, lined in neat rows in the front yard. That, it's just, he's different than when I had first met him. So I started to become concerned, and then all of this just sort of spiraled.
And when was the conversation with the state police where you
Just
were given
this
the
past
impression
month.
that they were gonna come?
Just
Check
this
in.
past Monday.
Okay,
Yeah, we were waiting till the holidays to really address it because we
Okay.
didn't see it as,
just this past
Yes.
2 days ago?
Yeah.
Right. Do other people have questions or?
Guess I'd like to point out that regardless of who owns the property, he's been there long enough that he legally has squatter rights, so that complicates the issue a little bit.
What are water rights?
Pretty much if you live somewhere
Like camping
long
and stuff.
enough, yeah, then you have certain legal protections to continue staying there.
I can bring that up when I try to get in touch with this
Yeah.
tax-paying person if they realize it, and if it's a family member, I mean, he may have permission to be there.
Yeah.
More than likely.
But that's the point, even if he doesn't have permission, it's not like he can be removed as easily.
And that would be the landowner's prerogative, not the health officer's prerogative to remove
Yes,
someone.
yeah.
Yeah, unless his living conditions
I
are
mean-
causing harm to someone other than himself, or you know what I mean, unless like he's disposing of feces and it's leaking into what, I mean, unless it actually, not that the private, I get that he's trespassing, that's a whole separate thing, but the town health officer, unless something he's doing on the property is causing harm to anyone but himself, essentially, it's not really a, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
like I said, I would like to believe that the landowner, whoever is in control of the land, would at least want to be aware of the safety of the guy living there. I mean, just from a
It's
Might not be
humane
my,
standpoint.
it's my understanding that Doug Cox and his sister Mary Cox are the people that are responsible for the property, and they are in probate at this point. That's the word that was given to me a year ago. Doug Cox and
Cobb.
I'm sorry, and Mary Cobb are the offspring of Ken's second wife. So that's,
Mary was
his sister.
wife, because that's what it said on Facebook.
I don't know,
that sounds
there's,
correct to me. I couldn't think of
Yeah,
her name earlier.
there's been a number of stories that have come out of there, but the bottom line is that I've been told it's in probate by Doug Cobb, and he's been the one who's been paying the rent.
Any other questions? Leanne, any other last thoughts? I mean, thank you for
I
bringing
wasn't,
forward, and obviously, we're not
I know there
exactly
wasn't
sure.
much that could be done,
what-
but I figured I'd at least try.
Yeah,
And we
right,
will, we'll see
right.
if we can reach
Well,
out
and
and
thank you
get
for
some help.
doing that too. I mean, it's important. Thank you.
I'll let you know what I find out.
Good luck dragging him out. Thanks, Larry. Okay, so we reordered the agenda for those of you who weren't here. So next up is actually 7B, the discussing and potentially voting on the Suits of Little Peanuts building window bids. So as a refresher, we received 3 bids. To summarize, super high level, one was from Mominy for repairing the windows of $8,000. guess I'll leave the envelope with that. One was from Norm Holden for repairing the windows of $5,500. And one was from Apex, the folks who are here tonight, which was for replacing the windows for $10,550.
That was paint too.
Bruce, I'll let you kick off the discussion. Since you're the one most familiar with this and
What's that? What'd you say, Glenn?
It's reminding you of the timeline.
put the most.
How much time was that? Unlimited? I have this.
I couldn't resist, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I have this.
It is a fair point, but yeah. So, Bruce,
I'll do an overview, let everybody keep in mind, we'll start with a dollar figure at this point. Right now, we have $7,000 on account from some, I just talked to Sarah a few minutes ago, $7,400 and some odd dollars in our account with, from Susie's Little Peanuts, plus the use of the capital improvement fund, which specifically was pointed towards anything that we, in the town for building repair. So if you put those two totals together, we're looking at $11,300. $11,700 presently. Any questions about the money?
well, I would just say that from my standpoint, I do not consider that money that's been set aside for capital improvement to be money that's necessarily money we would spend on maintenance of that building.
Just a moment.
I'm not denying that we could.
I'm just
I'm just
telling you
saying
what the
I
intent.
don't think we should.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you what the intent of the town was last spring, if I can find it here. And I have it right here. And it was, shall the town apply the budget surplus for the 2017-2018 budget in the amount of $3,300 in the following manner for the capital improvement fund. Discussion is called for. Doug Wallman asked what the capital fund is and what it is to be used for. Samara's Wick, town treasurer, replies, it is a fund set up by the select board to offset any expenses required for all town-owned buildings.
Yeah, as I'm saying, I'm not denying that we wouldn't have the authority to use that money for that building.
Right.
I'm just saying, I do not believe personally that that money should be used for maintenance, because I don't consider repairing windows to be a capital improvement necessarily. I also think we have several other buildings in this town that do not have a revenue source that creates money from which they can be improved. So I think,
Well, one building has over $20,000 in the account, and the other building has over $2,000 in the account, and it's never touched.
right, I'm
We
talking
have-
mostly about this building.
What, this is the town office?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of expense to the town office? Like what?
Well, that's what you
What
don't
is
know.
it?
The reason you have a fund like this is for
Okay.
unanticipated expenses.
Okay, unanticipated expenses, okay, I'll go with that.
But that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Other people, you feel differently, and that's fine. Others may feel differently as
Okay.
well.
But still, it's still our job to maintain the building and fix the
Yeah.
building as needed.
Absolutely.
And that building needs to be fixed and maintained, much the same way that when we answered the problem last year for the round schoolhouse and for the issues with the church.
Right.
Okay? We have issues with that building, which we've been addressing. And to go on, I won't read the whole rest of it, but it's quite specific. And then I even explain, Select Board Member Bruce Miller gives a brief summary of repairs made on the school building and expresses a need for further repairs for maintenance needed in the future. No further discussion, the article is called and seconded. No one complained about it, a vote was called for, and they passed it.
Okay, that's, all right. But you
Well, what?
you do realize that people approving that vote and not arguing with you about how the money may be spent does not constitute everyone who was there agreeing that that money should then be spent to repair windows on that building. I mean, come on.
All
You
right.
can't really
All right,
interpret
all right,
that that
all
way.
right.
Can I say something?
Sure can.
Okay. You guys are gonna, this
No, we're
conversation.
gonna put an end to it, right? This is going
Okay,
forever.
because I'm much more interested in hearing what you have to say about the specific things in
Yes.
front of us, and then we
I
can
agree.
move back to the financial conversation, whether or not
Okay.
we think it should happen. So if
Okay.
you want to, I would love to hear your thoughts on these bids
Okay,
specifically.
okay. I know, Chris. I have no doubt in my mind that the work that you would do would be great. I have a problem with the amount of money that's spent on. I have a problem with the argument about the R factor comparison, because one could use window quilts and or drapes that I have there as an example, as well as examples, for a lot less money, and we are not, at this point, paying the bill of the heating. Another thing is, we're replacing the windows, just to start with the replacement windows, and you guys can attack me if you want. With vinyl replacement windows, I don't know how the longevity of the windows are. I've never installed Anderson windows. I have different ones in my house that are aluminum clad, not with wood trim, and I love them. But saying that, after 20 years, what condition are they gonna be in? We know what the condition of these windows are in after an extended period of time, probably 100 years. And the wood is in excellent shape. And yes it is.
Those windows are in complete disrepair.
How's that?
They're single pane,
So,
just the hardware and.
The thing I'd like,
but they're not leaking.
the thing I'd like to say is, I know you guys are here and I appreciate you attending, but we're discussing a number of bids and a number of
And they
decisions
don't-
that
they
don't
didn't
necessarily
say your opinion.
involve your specific bid. So
No, I understand.
I don't want this to become a debate
Right.
merely about that one bid, because,
Right, I'm giving you an overview of all three. And I'm
Okay.
discussing each one.
okay.
The other two are very simple. The difference is whether we replace the windows or not. And my argument is, for the extra $5,000, is it worth it to do that? When we can do other mitigating things to increase the R factor, whether it be $2,000 on rock sill insulation for up top, or whether the quilts and the drapes after the windows are done, and the storms are sealed. And don't forget, they're not just single replacement windows, they're storm windows as well, and they would be sealed as well. Also, the track record with those windows is they've held up. You say complete disrepair, and you're gonna have the opportunity to go for it, Chris. But where I sit is this: we've got to spend another over $30,000. Normal will give a bid of $37,000 on to paint that building. Talk about disrepair. That building needs to be painted,
Right.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let me finish, and
All
then
right.
go ahead.
Yeah, let's-
So we're looking at paying the money out for the windows, paying out the money for, let's suppose we went your roof, that's $10,500, we're pushing $50,000 by the time we're done. Painting doing the windows replacement and painting the building itself. Momomini gave me a quote of in the 20s, and that wasn't even including the entire building. And we had a solid bid from Norm Holden of $37,000 to paint that building. It's a lot of money, and it's gonna take some considerable amount of time to do it. What I don't wanna do, and if they're right, I'm with it, I don't wanna shortchange anything. I don't wanna be replacing windows after 20 years. I don't wanna be having issues with the painting of the window. You all know me well enough at this point to know that I've been real serious about the quality done to that, to the best of my ability, to make sure we did, I found things in that building, well, I don't have to go into that, you already know it, to make things right.
Uh-huh.
So, the bottom line to me is whether we spend $10,500, $10,550 I think it was, 88,000 from Momomini, or 5,500 on Norm's bid.
Right.
And where I sit, I don't think there's a hell of a lot of difference between the other two bids, and I would go with the low bid, because I've seen both of their work. So that's where I sit. Now, as to whether the select board feels, after listening to these good guys, that their argument is better than mine, I have some issues putting vinyl replacement windows in a wood building, wood sash building that's lasted as long as it has. And the wood in that building is in good shape, everybody, I've seen it. Now, we can listen, if you want to, we can listen to them, and they can.
Well, let's,
to these guys.
other people have, Joseph, do you wanna, you had something?
Yeah, I guess we bring up the issue of saving money, and you mentioned that it's gonna cost an awful lot of money to paint this building, and so we don't wanna spend a lot of money to fix the windows, and we have to paint the building as well. What needs to come first? I mean, are you saying that we need to save money on these windows because we need to paint the building next year?
No.
Okay, so
What I-
so I'm just trying to establish a
What I
base,
said-
I'm
what
trying
I-
to establish a baseline here.
Okay. What I said was,
you
if you're
don't-
taking it out of context, was,
Not necessarily.
wait, Joe, I said, I don't wanna marginalize the quality of the work done to any part of that building. And if these guys over here can prove that my argument's wrong, and you all wanna go with that, I'm good with it.
Can I just say that that's not the point of this? The purpose of this is not to debate. The purpose of this is for us to evaluate the bids, knowing what we know about that building and what we have as a town as money to maintain that building and what other needs we have to do to that building for us to make a decision on what direction we're going to go. I appreciate these guys coming, and if we have questions for these guys, I'm sure they're more than willing to answer them, but I don't want to put them in a position where they have to try to defend why they think we should replace them or whatever, because it isn't their decision, it's our decision.
Right. Okay, so I guess I've said my point. Joe, if you have anything else to say?
Well, yeah, I think that, I think all other issues aside, the painting, where the money's coming from, everything else aside, I think that even if we went with a low ball of repairing the windows, $5,000, the value simply doesn't compare to what you get from a modern window. And I would also have questions on the longevity of the specific windows that they would be installing, but regardless of that, a modern window is simply going to offer you, just in R factor alone, you're going to, in the life of the window, you're probably going to save the difference in heat. And I don't think that it's, I don't think that it's really the right thing to say, like, oh, we don't pay for the heat, so it's not.
No, I don't mean it that way.
Yeah, so I mean, because,
That's right,
but I think it's-
the community is paying for the heat one way or another. So I
Yeah.
think that needs to be something considered. I think that economics of heating that building need to be considered. And so that savings that you'll get over the life of the window, and I'm not saying that it is the only factor, but it certainly is a factor in the price differential between, $5,000 or $10,500. And then certainly $2,000 extra dollars, like if we're comparing Momamides and these gentlemen here, $2,500, it's simply just, it doesn't even compete in my mind.
Shelby, do you want to
Um,
weigh in?
yeah, and I think the whole heating part, I think just makes it also a longer term, more attractive rental. So say Susula Lupinus was ever like, hey, Brookline, not doing this anymore, we needed to rent it out again. Having a lower heating cost does make it a more attractive rental, and that is obviously, like you said, it's one of the only building that creates revenue for itself. So I think that's important to consider, is how it will affect the tenants, even though, yeah, it doesn't, it's not gonna save us money, but it does help improve the desirability of that location for renters. And ozone layer,
We've got there.
Ozone layer.
lower consumption, longer planet life, I don't know, something like that, if you're drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever, but, yeah, so I think there's something about definitely, and I really don't know anything about R factors, so I don't know what that difference looks like, but if there really is a significant difference in consumption, I think that's something, based on how much heat it can hold, that's something that does seem like a factor to me, not that it really, I don't know where I stand exactly yet, but that seems, I like to
I
think
think
about
one
that.
of the things that concerns me is repairing the existing windows. They're already over 100 years old. Repairing something that's that old, are we gonna get another 30 years? I mean, age is age,
Okay, not to put you on the spot, can I ask you a question? Have you seen the windows up close?
well,
Have you?
I haven't poked them or anything, but
Have you
I've
been
seen.
inside and seen the windows on the inside?
I said I've seen, where they need scraped and stuff, but I haven't inspected them.
Okay, well, walk around and look at them from the inside.
No,
Oh,
besides, I could look at them and I still wouldn't know what you're talking about. I'm not a contractor.
You don't have to be a contractor, okay.
Well, I would just like to, I would just like to ask, because Bruce, obviously you have spent the most time there, not just with yourself, but with other vendors, and have gotten, obviously, in addition to just the people that we've gotten quotes from, you've had other people look at this. Am I correct that your opinion and the opinion of at least many of the vendors you've talked to, including 2 of the 3 that bid on this, were that the windows are structurally in good shape, they need to be
Absolutely.
repaired?
Pardon me?
They at least need to be repaired,
absolutely.
but not necessarily replaced.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean,
And both
I defer to your understanding of it and the time you've spent with it. I'll say for myself, just to round this out, I have concerns about spending $10,000 on those windows,
Me
just
too.
from a standpoint of not being able to necessarily afford it, or what it limits us as far as other things that I know we're going to have to do to maintain that building down the road. So from my standpoint, I am leaning more towards the idea of accepting one of the bids to repair them, and at that point, I don't see why we wouldn't accept the lowest bid to repair them, given that that I think many of us feel very comfortable with the quality of the work of all of the vendors.
For sure. All 3, without a doubt.
So Gwen, sorry, I think you
No,
were starting
that
with
was,
something
that
else.
was, no, that answered my
Okay,
question.
Joseph.
Something that occurred to me, well, that I thought about was that this $10,000 price tag is, how many windows is it? The 10, right? What if we just split it in half? If we're looking at replacing or repairing the windows and the price is a problem, why can't we just do half of them 1 year, do the worst half this year, and then the next 5 another year? Because I think
You asked a question,
that
I'm
would
gonna answer it.
that would be, I think, a much smarter investment than repairing the
And
old
you're
ones.
implying, if I, not to put words in your mouth, that it should be done after painting the building.
No, not at all.
Okay, well, in
Absolutely.
that case, then I submit the argument that the building needs to be painted. And when I go
Well,
around the
that's
building.
why I asked. You think that the building needs to be painted within the next several years?
Yes, I do.
So
And
do you
it-
think
and
that the painting the building is a higher priority than the windows?
I think it's in order.
So then why are we doing the windows now?
I said in order, meaning the windows first.
So the windows first. So we should
Mhm.
do the windows
first
the
and
right
paint the
way, first.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I perceive as being the right way.
And
Is
and
doing
if
the windows first.
And if
And
the
then-
cost is such a big issue, then we could split it up over a year, and then we just have to push everything back a year, you know?
Well, you know,
Wouldn't it be cheaper to have the vendor who's already there doing all 10 windows at one shot versus come back and do piecemeal? Because I think if you get a price for 5 windows, it may reflect the fact that it's gonna be a little more expensive versus doing the whole
thing
thing.
was.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a fair point to bring up. I guess I would just note that we do not have bids for that kind of process.
That's
So
correct.
all we would be doing is speculating on
That's
that.
correct.
Yeah,
But we could solicit new bids from people.
Could do
We
that.
would have to put it back out again. We'd have to do
Mine
another
would be the
RFP.
same.
We'd have to publish it
You
again.
could split it in half, doesn't
Um,
matter.
I don't think it would be that much of an issue.
yeah, that,
I
For
don't.
me, it would.
No, knowing,
We don't mind
but even
asking
painting and.
about
Chris,
Sure, yeah, I
knowing
mean,
the
that's
vendors-
fine, but that doesn't speak to what
So,
the
yeah,
other
I
vendors
would-
would be.
it would be the
It
same.
doesn't mean anything.
Okay,
It's a-
which I do understand, yes, that if we went down that road, we would have to start a new bidding process over again.
Right.
I do understand that.
Right, it doesn't change the fact, I will just say that we're getting then essentially, to simplify, to make it super simplified, we get half of the windows fixed to our satisfaction for $5,000, as opposed to having all of the
Done for
windows
10,500.
fixed to some of our satisfaction for half the value. So, I mean, it does come down to, I guess, whether we
Now, were both of you for
Decide whether-
replacing the windows?
Oh, we're-
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if you were the same company or.
They're definitely team
I'm
replacement
confused.
windows. I would like to hear a little bit about the windows that would be going, and we obviously know a lot about the ones that are there because of your experience with them, but if you've seen the windows in my house driving by, I need replacement windows too, so,
And
I,
me too.
yeah,
And,
mine are
Yeah.
beyond, mine are probably not as nice
I've
as
been
those
there.
in the.
and, you know, I don't wanna overstate this, but I think the thing that I wanna make the point for myself, at least, when I look at the windows at that building, I don't look at them like I look at the windows in my own house. This is a rental property that the town owns now. We only know that we have it rented for a few more years. At any point in time, we may have no tenant in that building. And at a certain point, as a town, we will have the option to sell that building, which we possibly may, as a town, decide we want to do.
There's no guarantee, we have, in the sense of the lease.
Right.
We have
Right.
basically a 2-year lease with a 1-year escape clause.
Right,
So-
which isn't to say we shouldn't maintain it and repair it, and if money were whatever, I mean, if the situation were such that we had banked a whole bunch of money on this property over the last couple of years, rather than spent everything we've taken in virtually to this point, then I'll even freely admit, I would be more inclined to want to consider replacing windows than repairing them, but that's not the situation.
But when
So,
you put the total package together, whether it's $37,000 for painting the building, plus the windows,
Right.
we're talking a serious amount of money and a long time to save for it. When given that we get it, I think next year, you can check my math, I think it's $22,000 from our lease next year. And that's without expenses, we don't know, there's gonna be expenses. So, I'm saying that.
I still would like to know about the life, I just don't know anything about the windows. If
about-
they could just, I don't know anything about these, or what is,
Right.
like, cause we keep bringing up how long are they gonna last, so I just, if
Right.
you could give us like, just like the
yeah, you wanna
specs,
just
the
give us
basic
the
specs
Reader's
on it.
Digest version?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
an Anderson window, which we all know, named Anderson. It's the best window you can purchase. It's their silver line, which is a replacement window that is made for exact situations like this. It's all vinyl. It's a 2-pane argon-filled window that is, it's modern day construction. It's not gonna compare to a 100-year-old window. It's gonna last way longer. If anybody wanted to see them installed, I have several rental properties where these are the windows that I install. And if anybody wanted to come and see them, take a look at them, and you can see the superior quality of the window compared to what's existing there now. Also, you brought up the resale factor of it. The resale of having modern windows in the building versus these 100-year-old is gonna be gigantic. I mean, it's hands down. You know, I see that every day in what I do, and
Most people are most concerned are about their windows in their house because it's their biggest loss of heat.
it's not gonna compare. The function, yes, they're 100 years old, and they were a good product. Obviously, they lasted very long, but the bottom line is in 20 years, if you're asking what the condition and the function of this window is gonna be compared to what you have, even after you replace it, it's hands down, it's not even gonna be close. It is a vinyl window. There is no rot, it is warranted. It has a lifetime warranty. If anything happens to the glass as far as with the argon filled, if any visual imperfections that happen due to a manufacturer's reason, you know, obviously if a rock hits the window, that's different, but will be covered by Anderson. And we're not talking an off-name window. I mean, Anderson is the biggest name in windows. So it's not that it's a Home Depot product or you know, it's an Anderson window backed by Anderson.
Great, thank you for that. I mean, unless someone want to make a motion to accept one of the bids, or do we want to
Yeah, I'm gonna
table this, or do we want, is there
I wanna make a
more
motion to
investigation that anyone wants to
I'm
make?
sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Sorry, no, it's
No,
okay.
finish
I'm
what you
just-
want to say.
Oh, I guess I have one other minor point, speaking
Go for
to the windows. This, as it is used now, is a daycare. Obviously, kids can get a little rambunctious. The strength of the windows is massively. I mean, you know from your everyday interaction with a modern window compared to a single pane window, I can't even imagine how much more force that they'll take compared to those single pane
But
windows.
still, if you break the glass, it doesn't snap on that.
No, yeah, but I'm just like, if someone,
Watch how much it costs you to replace that glass.
if someone tosses a book at the single pane windows we have, it's gonna shatter them. If someone tosses a book at these, it's gonna bounce off and you wouldn't even know it.
But you can still break the argon gas on the inside. from
And
the
then they're warranted if there's a problem.
No, they're not if they're hit.
Alright,
Correct?
regardless.
No, not if
If
they're,
they're-
but I mean,
How many windows have you replaced in 100 years?
Alright, I don't wanna get,
Yeah.
we need to wrap this, we need to
How many
wrap this
light
up
guys?
one minute.
No, in the building that.
Okay,
Not-
let's not cross talk, okay, guys?
Okay.
So, Shelby, any other thoughts at the moment?
Just that I don't particularly want to vote on one of these tonight. I'd kinda like to table this, just until, and I know this is your baby, you know everything about this
That's
ministry.
what I do, babe.
I just-
Let me ask you this, what is it that we're going to know if we bring it back up in
A week
2
or 2
weeks
weeks.
or a month that we don't know now that we want to look into? I'm not opposed to that,
Yeah.
but what I don't necessarily think it
I
makes
have a
sense
problem
for
with-
anybody.
I have a problem with
Is
Shelby
to-
not being comfortable with it. She's the
Right, well,
wild,
that's-
you're the wild card, that's why you got that.
Bruce, that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking the question. So what is it that you don't know now that you want to know to feel comfortable about making a decision?
Nothing about any of the windows, I think it's more that, like, I'm sure you know, like, some of my biggest hesitations about any improvement with this building have been the fact that we only now kind of have a surplus in the account, and just, and it's my own fault, I've been busy, I haven't really had a chance to dig into the financials and find time to sit with, Sarah and look at the accounts and really figure out kind of what's going on, so I mean, I know you bring these numbers and you say there's $7,000 in there, and that's great, but I don't know, I guess I'm just sort of not sure about making any, like, this big of an investment at all. I mean, I'm just gun shy about the money, that's all. So
Okay.
for me, it would just give me time to actually get with Sarah and look at the numbers as well, because that's what I've been working on with the spreadsheets and
Where
stuff
I
for
sit,
the budget.
I
So
don't-
that's my only reason.
Where I
guess,
sit, if
for wanting
I
to
make
push it.
an offer, a bid, it's $5,500.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from 10.5.
I'll say for myself, I'm,
And you're not.
at this point, though I'm concerned about any amount of money that we spend on that building at points, I am actually comfortable that we in a position by the time this work would get done to be able to afford $5,500
For sure.
windows. I'm not comfortable that we would be in a position to be able to afford
10.5.
10, 5, or even 8, quite frankly, to repair them.
Because-
But that's just
You
where,
created a point.
where I say.
Because we're looking.
We
at
all
the
know
summer
though,
to-
tomorrow, something else could happen in that building that we could have a plumbing problem that would blow a bunch of this money. But as we sit right now, I think we would be okay to be able to spend that amount of money. Sorry, Joseph.
I agree with David's assessment of the financials,
Okay.
and that's why I certainly don't think that we should pay any money to refurbish those
You
windows.
go the half and half route.
Or
Mhm.
if we wanna do that, I think that would be probably the smartest move. That would require, getting new quotes for it and all that. Or we could just do nothing for a year and do all of it next year. That would be my suggestion. Because I don't think, even though we can afford $5,000 in the summer, I don't think that we should spend $5,000 to repair these windows. I think that we should, if we're concerned that much about the financials, I think that we should wait an entire year where we would feel comfortable spending $10,000.
Well, personally speaking, I'm not concerned with the financials. Knowing every expense that's been on this building for 6 years.
Yeah. Even if it was
Okay.
$10,000, you're comfortable spending $10,000?
Well, it depends on the argument about the $4,300. We're looking at only 11.7, what would I say, 11.8 or something like that? But would you feel more comfortable if you had one or both of the painters come up? Because I know Mo Momney said.
It's not, I know that, I know
think
these people as well.
conceptually, he just.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
all I'm talking about,
Yeah.
there's been a lot said about whether the windows could be preserved this is the question, two questions. Preserve for an extended period of time, and whether it's worth it considering the R factor and the value of the heat retention, correct?
That's part of it, and I know that they do excellent work, and I know that they could preserve the windows, and they could probably last, they could probably last another 50 years,
There
probably.
we go.
But
Will
they're not,
those- will
but
the
they're
Anderson
not,
last?
they're
They're
old
far
windows.
outlast.
Okay, replacement windows?
It's a replacement Anderson window, okay? It's modern technology. It's gonna
Yeah.
far supersede,
Okay.
anything that.
Okay.
Again,
I'm with you.
we are not gonna get into a further discussion of debating whether the Anderson windows are quality or better than old windows or
Yeah.
whatever. That really is not relevant to the argument.
Really is.
So, Joseph, so your view is that we should wait and potentially do something in a year's time. The only thing I'll say is, I don't know, in a year's time, we may have found other things that we think we more urgently need to spend money on. Not that that changes anything. I mean, what happens when we don't do anything about these windows for several years? I
But
don't know.
if that was a danger, if we in a year's time we find something else that we should be spending the money on, then wouldn't we have already shot ourselves in the foot by spending the $5,000 now?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because if it was a major expense, it would have to go, we'd have to get a loan for it, like if it was a furnace, we've been around this, go ahead, Guy, we've been around this for 6 years ago.
I just want to throw this last thing in the financials. First of all, the town has a responsibility to maintain all its properties, whether it be the church, the school, or anything else, and we have to make sure that they are in a sellable situation or a saleable situation, or if we have a tenant, we have to make sure that they are within the realms of law. The other thing is that I think we're going to have a substantial surplus in our budget this year, and maybe that can be part of the equation in regards to a town meeting, asking some of the folks if they would like to maybe use some of that surplus to go toward maintaining some of our buildings. I'm just trying to, we're a very limited town with our expenses and income, and it's damned if we do, damned if we don't, but we have to do something, that's for sure. And like I say, with that surplus, we may be able to have some wiggle room in there to maybe do some of the work that has to be done. That's just my own feeling.
I wanted to drive home the
We're gonna
point.
wrap this up.
Okay, I just wanted to
Make a
drive home the
motion or
point
not.
about major expenses that Joe took in. And a major expense is the furnace. Supposing the boiler goes. We're looking at $25,000. Without a doubt, the only way you're gonna get it is with a loan. It's not gonna happen out of our kitty. That's just the way it is.
All right, your concern is painting the building?
Yes.
Could that be painted, as his suggestion, half and half? So could you do painting or like the front of the building, the
Yes.
worst part,
I
and the
had-
back of the building?
I had another
Rather
idea
than
with respect-
30,000 all at once, or?
I would
Let's
like
get
to
the
suggest,
windows
we're not
first.
discussing painting
No,
the
we're not.
building.
We're not.
And we shouldn't go down that,
We're just-
because that's all kinds of things
Right.
that are not relevant to what
We're
we're
deciding
discussing
now
right
whether to do the windows or not.
Right.
And I'm gonna make a bid that we go with the $5,500. That's me.
So you're making a motion that we
Motion.
accept the bid of $5,500 from Norm Holden for
Correct.
repairing the windows. I will second that. Now let's have discussion on that motion. If there is any discussion on that motion.
When you say repair, is that repair and paint?
It was paint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he
If I
did
can
say
read his
paint.
handwriting,
Good.
which isn't easy.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if he actually had the same amount of stuff in his as,
That's mommy.
no, I know, I meant in comparison, if they were actually providing the same level.
They are. The
Okay.
only difference that I've had, and I've had several discussions, I spent over 3 to 4 hours with Mommy, I spent several hours with Norm. And we're tweaking it. There's some discussion about how to prime it.
Okay.
Whether you use oil primer instead of latex
But
primer.
as far as you're concerned, they're comparable.
Yeah,
Okay.
without a doubt. But the explanation right here is remove the window sash, scrape down sand, replace all missing glass, prime with acrylic primer sealer, finish paint with acrylic finish white paint, clean glass, replace sash, and it'll be the best paint you can get. There's no compromise with the paint. It's like $60 a gallon, because we use that much for the doing replacement, it's like 2 gallons.
Okay.
And
Any other questions or clarifications before we vote
that's
on the
my
motion?
lease.
Anyone?
I guess I would just like to reiterate that I really think that we're doing the town a disservice, looking forward into the future by doubling down on 100-year-old technology. I think that we're rapidly moving into the future, and energy conservation is a primary concern of many Vermont residents, and so I think that if we need to fix these windows, if we choose to fix these windows, we should only be doing so in a step forward, not a step backwards.
Okay, Gwen, you got a gut feeling about it? Come on, Gwen.
I really don't know. I just don't know.
I'm kind of more with Joseph on this one, and that's part of my hesitation about the money, because I see 10,000 and I see that, I don't see 10,000. You know what I mean, when I look at what we have, I don't see $10,000 to spend at this moment.
Right.
So I look at the bid that I think's the better choice for the property and for the town, and I don't see something that we can afford right now. So for me, it's like a rock and a hard place, but because of
Yeah, I
that,
don't
I wouldn't
disagree with
necessarily wanna support the bid. I wouldn't necessarily wanna support approving the repair, because I think
Don't think
either
we have
finan-
money.
Yeah, no, I think we have money for the repair, I don't want the repair, I
Oh,
want
I'm
the
sorry, not the
replacement, and
replacement.
I don't think we have money for that replacement right now. So, I'm standing on I wouldn't probably be supporting this, and, cause my gut feeling would be we need to figure out how to replace some windows with what money we do have, and not repair them, just on the information about the
Okay.
windows.
But you can't replace just one window, they all need to be replaced.
No, I know, but I mean, you can work on a project in pieces. So I'm just saying that there could be, that's why that was saying we need more time, because I obviously would not say, right, I wouldn't vote right, like, I wouldn't make a motion to approve $10,000 bid, because I don't see it financially.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I want to repair the windows instead of replacing them.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Well, we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor of accepting the bid from Norm Holden for $5,500 for repairing and painting, whatever, the windows, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So 3 in favor, 2 opposed? All right, motion passes. We've accepted the bid from Norm Holden for $5,500 to repair the windows. Thank you, guys.
All right.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I mean, and just, I think, obviously, to reiterate, if money were a different circumstance for us, you know.
Thank you very much, guys. Good night.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night. All right. Now, with our rejigged agenda, we are.
What does that do? Where are we at?
Now
We're sort of on schedule.
we are now discussing 7A,
Oh,
which
good.
is the road equipment purchase article for town meeting. I'll let Joseph give everybody a Reader's Digest version of why there is no article for town meeting for road purchase. But
I
Shelby
kind of have a
knows.
slight, yeah.
Shelby kind of
Yeah.
knows
Okay.
already.
So you didn't have a meeting Monday?
Yeah, so we didn't really have a full meeting because it was just myself and Doug there. And I haven't had time to fully converse with Mark or Archie on this. So I'm a little hesitant to make any statement on the consensus of our committee, since I don't know their specific opinions on the matter. But last time we discussed this as a select board, we had 3 bids for 3 machines that fit the parameters of our request that we put out. One of them was the machine from last year from Able, and one of them was a JCB from Northland JCB. They're a company that has actually sold a couple of these machines relatively locally, but Londonderry has one of them. And then one of them, there was a little confusion. Last time I said that it was another JCB. It was actually Whacker Newson. It's just a different wheeled excavator. Regardless of all that, when I was pulling everything together and reaching back out to all of these dealerships, I was told that the Whacker Newson sold like 2 weeks ago, and that the machine from last year from Able Equipment is probably sold like yesterday. They were in the final processes of selling the machine. So the only vehicle that we're left with is the JCB, which I think that I can speak for the committee saying that we all agreed that hands down the JCB is the best machine when compared directly to any of the other wheeled excavators. It's got a lot of features that set it above the competitors. The problem is that it's expensive, and we voted as a select board to leave a price out of the bid that we put out. And so it certainly meets the bid requirement because we didn't have a requirement for price. But I think that we all have the understanding that going into this, that we wanted to beat the price proposed last year, because that was one of the things that many of the townsfolk were wary about, was the around about $90,000 price. We were looking to get that down to, we going into it naively expected maybe around $75,000. Turns out that that $90,000 is, is pretty much the lowest one we could have found. The Whacker Newson one was like $96,000, and the JCB one would be like $150,000.
Did they come with an over-rail grass cutter?
No, it did not come with a mower.
So the one from Abelli had brand new over-the-rail grass cutter. It was $88,000 minus the down payment, so the town would have to come up with, I think, about $60,000, which is what had to be financed. So I'm just curious what those other prices were, because the over-the-rail grass cutter was a big issue. It costs us $3,200 to $3,500 a year for one sweep.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was the primary concern.
Driver, yeah.
That was the primary cost benefit looking at the wheeled excavator. Although you could get a tractor to do the mowing, the wheeled excavator can do the mowing better than just about anything else, as well as having all of the other benefits of having a wheeled excavator. But all that being said, certainly after scouring the market for used wheeled excavators of a medium small size, it turns out that the Abel's offering of the Terex was a reasonable offering, and then I think that you could looking at the machine, there's certainly, we heard the town voice their opinions about the machine last year, being they don't make it anymore, it's kind of old, all those things. But this is all really kind of water under the bridge because it's sold to somebody else. And I don't think, and again, I can't speak for the committee because I don't have Mark's opinion, I don't have Archie's opinion, I haven't even fully informed Archie of these terms of event. But I don't think that the committee would make the recommendation that we should buy a used JCB for rounds about $150,000.
Yeah, really? Okay.
Holy moly.
Can I,
So that's,
I just wanna get one thing clear. Are we all in agreement that even though we put out the bid, that we should try to do something and try to come to an agreement on something that that this town would need and use?
I don't think, as we sit now, there is there really isn't much to choose from, there's only one.
Okay.
And I think that, I guess we can ask
Whether
quickly,
that's good enough.
do you wanna spend it's certainly good.
No, it's not.
Do you wanna spend
Is that-
$150,000?
Is that wheeled excavator not available now?
No, that's what
That's what he's saying. One of those bids was for that wheeled excavator, it's gone.
That
Yeah.
phone was
Gone now.
in the
Yeah.
bathroom.
Is this your phone, Shelby?
Oh, yeah, did I leave it in the bathroom?
Yeah.
The first time I've done that, won't be the last.
When I spoke to them 2 weeks ago, the machine was available.
You get tired.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so I spoke to him last Friday, and so he said the machine was selling, and I spoke to JD, and he said that the specific conversation was that he wanted to know if I was 100% sure we were gonna buy the machine, because if I was, there was a possibility that he could delay the sale. And I said,
He never said that to me.
Oh, wait.
oh no, when you spoke to him,
Because the situation
I don't think
changed
that
from when
anyone
you
was
spoke.
buying it.
Oh, okay.
When I spoke, it was a new occurrence, and I told him that certainly I was not 100%,
Okay.
and that financially for their
All right,
company,
time
I
out.
can't make that
Please.
decision.
This is such a sales rap. Look, may I make a suggestion? That we reinitiate the phone call to, what's his name again, JB?
No, I spoke to him, and he said the machine was selling.
Yeah,
Was selling, but it hasn't sold. In other words, is there a deposit on it? Has it been sold? I've been.
Yeah, no, they were like he told me that they were selling it yesterday. Tuesday was when they were finalizing it. I have not confirmed to him with him, so given the events in Iran.
he
maybe
knows
they
the
changed their
situation that we're not going to be able to, I mean, he's not an idiot as a salesperson. If there was an opportunity, I
No.
mean, he presented to Joseph the opportunity for us to steal the sale from someone, but it required us saying right now, yeah, we
Yeah.
want that thing,
Of
and
course
we
we
pull
couldn't
the
do
trigger,
that.
which
Yeah.
obviously we can't do.
Okay, so at this point in time, the only thing, like you were saying, that we have to pick from is something that's $150,000.
If that machine was available, would you recommend it to the town?
I think that well, I can't speak as the
You'd have to
committee.
discuss
Yeah, we'd have to
that,
discuss
the
as
committee would have to
committee.
discuss that,
Yeah.
if it had been available, and it isn't.
They've been discussing it for how many months now?
A year.
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
Well, right, but in fairness to the committee and everything, you know, we put the bid out and we gave till December 15th, and bids came in and those guys followed up on bids, and while that process was going on, the intention was Monday night, they were gonna go through the remaining bids, and we were gonna, I mean, the reality is, we're not in a position to buy anything until after we would warn something at town meeting, and there's a whole nother debate to be had as to whether we would really, again, warn specifically buying that one machine in the event that it gets sold between now and then, or whether we would do an amount or whatever.
Right.
But I don't fault the committee, and the reality is,
Well, that's not really a problem.
and part of the process of forming the committee, and part of the charter, so to speak, of the committee was to, it may well have come out, and we said this when we formed the committee, it may at the end of the day turn out that there isn't a machine that suits our needs that's available.
I think I will say.
And unfortunately, right now, that seems to be the case.
I will say that after the research that I've done personally, I didn't know a huge amount about the used wheeled excavator market when I went into it. After looking at it for the last 6 months, the machine from Able was a good deal, and I think that the machine itself is outperformed a lot by the other machine, the JCB that we're looking at, but for the price, it certainly was a good deal, and there is not a plethora of those machines for sale. But again,
It appears as though what's happening now is we're coming into season, so everybody's.
I don't know if that's really the problem. I think that it's just, it was kind of bad luck for the salesperson that it stayed on the market for that long, and because they don't seem to stay on the market for that long. But I think that even if it was still on the market, it puts us in a difficult spot as what we do, warning it at town meeting, because you know, what if we warn that we're gonna buy that and then it sells in February, so,
Two things.
you know.
One,
Alright, we need to wrap this up. so
okay, I
we can
wanted,
move on.
Mark wanted to get something in, and he didn't get an opportunity. Do you want to?
Well, my question was answered about we wouldn't get the okay until after
Town
town
meeting.
meeting. And so whether that machine would still be available would be obsolete at that time if it was sold. In comparisons though, I just want to say the Terex machine which the town had rented from Able was a good machine, and the price was a good price, and then we compared it with a couple other machines the same size, and we found that JCB is actually manufactured in the United States, and there's more parts probably available for that reason. It also has some more modern features coming with it. It will accept a mower. It doesn't come with a mower, but they have all these features that are outdoing everybody else in this line of machinery. So it looks like if you did compare prices to the Terex to the JCB, for just a little bit more, the JCB was turning out to be the better machine for the money, for warranty, for the capabilities that it had. This design was even, in my personal opinion, was better than the Terex, which I really liked. The other one, we don't have as much specifics on it, but they're made in another country. So I feel like if we look long enough, you may find what you're looking for, but it's tough when you want something now, but you can't get it till later. There's just...
Let's discuss that for a minute, I know you want to move on. Like I said, being in sales all my life, there's always something that comes up. I'm looking at flutes on the net right now, I won't get into it. But anyway, something always comes up. In the 40-some odd years that I've sold things, this is never the last guy. Something else is gonna come up. My suggestion is that we reinitiate calling these vendors and having them call us if they have something that appears.
But that doesn't do us any good
I know
because we have
what you're gonna say.
approval for March.
I know that. So, the last time we can get the agenda for the town warning is for when, tonight, or is it next, or the 22nd? When's the last time we can get an article in on
We could possibly change something on the 22nd.
okay. Also, there's
But we're-
also the option that we could bring up a non-binding resolution with the town about this, just because I'm looking at the comfortability of the select board doing what the town wants, in as much as what happened last March. So,
Right.
if it's brought up to the town, non-binding, say, look folks, this is what happened last, what is your thought? But it's really, when it really comes down to it, it's the select board's responsibility to buy the equipment. But, given that I know I'm getting sticky here, but given what happened last March, they've already said, don't buy that piece of equipment. So, we need to reinitiate it, and then we'll have to, or we can entertain, let me finish, or we could even entertain a special town meeting after that if we need to. I know it's involved, but I think the
No.
importance of having the equipment is that important.
Well, I would argue that the responsibility of the select board is to make sure that our roads and facilities are maintained within the budget that we have set. What I'll say is, we have been doing that for many, many years without owning this piece of equipment.
That's true.
Part of the reason that buying this piece of equipment came up was because that piece of equipment was available for a price that I think the advisory committee has now determined after a lot of research was a fairly extraordinary price. That isn't the same thing as, so I guess what I would say at this point,
For good or bad.
unless the advisory committee meets and wants to promote something different than this, is that we have, by forming the advisory committee and having the advisory committee do their work, we have done what was in the best interest of the town, because that still may be not buying anything.
That's true.
So, nothing coming out of last town meeting came across to anyone, I don't think, that there was a groundswell of people who were desperate for us to buy a piece of equipment.
Okay.
So, the advisory committee has done their work. Unfortunately, maybe there would have been something that they would have wanted to suggest pulling the trigger on that's no longer available. Joseph made the point when we talked about this outside of the context of a meeting, just the two of us, the other night, that we should discuss this at town meeting, and we should not necessarily have any article related to it, but discuss that what these guys did in research and why we've ended up where we don't have anything, so people know.
That's productive.
But
Okay.
I personally don't see the need to be warning any article related to this, given the circumstances.
Well, that's why I said non-binding, you can be brought up in other business, it would be a non-binding resolution. I mean, you could say, hey, what do you all think? And that just gives the select board an idea of what the town is thinking, which is nice, you know, this is what we want to do.
Joseph.
I have like a procedural question. All these pieces that we're warning for the town meeting,
Yes.
is that like the agenda? We have to set the agenda in stone right now? Like if we,
that's what I was
so if
asking,
we
yeah.
discuss this, like I talked about the other night for like 5 minutes, like, hey, this is what we did, would that
That would
have
be
to be?
under other business.
Okay, wouldn't have to be a
When we
separate
would get to
agenda?
Article 15 under other business, the moderator would ask for other business,
Correct.
and I think
Okay.
at that point,
And
you
it
would,
would be
or
non-binding.
someone would say,
Okay.
to bring up, just to get people
We need
But it would be
on what
non-binding.
happened with this whether anybody promotes any kind of show of hands at that point of what people think about something, that can all be conducted in a non-binding, casual way during other business.
Okay,
If there have been times in the past when we have explicitly warned actual votes, though they might be called non-binding, to know that we were going to get a vote on whether the town wanted to rename the meeting house, for instance. But in an absence of having anything like that drafted or that we would necessarily agree on, I don't think that's appropriate. But casually, under other business, we can let people know what's going on and maybe even get some kind of sense from people of, okay, is this something that people think we should pursue more, or do people not want us to pursue it? Because that was never really determined last year.
Yeah.
Because of everything, that, I don't think anybody could have come out of that
Right.
really with a clear view on where people stood on whether or not we should own a piece of equipment.
Because the questions were raised, yeah.
Because it was, intermeshed with other reasons.
I think that it all started when we were talking about roadside mowing,
Yeah,
maybe owning a machine.
yeah, right.
For what we pay out.
Yep.
Right.
Right, but in part because because we knew that machine was available,
Right.
and when Guy looked into the pricing on it, or you and Guy looked into the pricing on it, we then came to realize, oh, okay, this could make real financial
more
sense.
than just one thing.
Right, yeah, multi-purpose. So I think that the equipment meeting should continue and just talk at some point. Maybe there's something will arise that we should bring to the town.
Mhm.
yeah, I'll certainly get in touch with you and Archie and Doug, so we can at least have one more meeting where all of us sit down and at least come to some sort of understanding.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Joe, about Archie and Doug? Are they inclined to purchase one of these if it was the right price and the right equipment?
Yeah, if it was the
Yeah.
right price and the right
Archie is?
equipment. They are if it was the right price.
Okay, I shouldn't have said it that way, but I did.
Yeah, no, it's a little insinuating.
I
But I
didn't mean
think
$10,000.
regardless, what we're discussing now is
Yeah,
whether we're gonna
right.
do an article for
Right.
town meeting, I
Right.
think that it feels
And
like
as
we
we
don't
s-
have an article to.
As we sit
Right.
right now, we have no article for it.
Yes.
That's correct.
I agree.
See,
But we're gonna make space for a discussion about, or at least present the findings of what's happened so far, and
Yes.
see if we can get feedback from the town, but otherwise do nothing like specific to.
The cutoff date though, Dave, is the 22nd or is it now?
We're not gonna,
After today?
we're gonna vote on this
Today.
tonight.
Okay.
We can discuss later the parameters under which there might need to be changes to it,
Okay.
but,
You want to move on? Okay.
well, and because we do, I mean,
Yeah.
statutorily, we have to warn, this article has to be warned and posted shortly after our next meeting.
Uh-huh.
And I do not want us to be in a situation where we are debating the merits of that at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, now we'll move on to the town meeting warning, and I'll say there's a draft of it that everybody has. You know, we can make changes to this tonight, and there are copies up here, Guy, for you and Mark, I think.
Up here.
If you want one.
I have one over here, thank you.
In my mind, there's no reason that all of this can't be finalized and approved by us this evening. One thing I'll say, you have next to you also an updated budget worksheet.
Uh-huh.
That has not yet been reviewed by the auditors.
Okay.
So there is the potential for underlying numbers to be changed by the auditors, in which case that would potentially change
That number of.
the numbers that we're warning. That's the kind of thing that we
On that
might
last
need to
meeting.
revisit at the last minute at the meeting on the 22nd. I would prefer not to be revisiting anything else at that point, because it then puts a lot of things in jeopardy about meeting statutory
Okay.
requirements. So, just to summarize this before we go through it in more detail, you know, most of the warning is fairly boilerplate. At the top, we've changed it to say that the meeting in the multipurpose room in Brookline on Monday, the second day of March, at 6 p.m. Before we move further on that, Bruce, did you talk to Olivia about
Yes.
6 p.m. and do they
Yes.
have any concerns with that?
No. The only thing I didn't ask her, which is a possibility, is that we could get in there Sunday. But she's already planning on not closing early, so we can get in there like 4 o'clock.
Okay, and that'll be fine. That's
Yeah.
plenty of time.
But,
That's good.
and I also, she was on her way out the door when I was walking in, and Susie was there, and I was talking to Susie about a bunch of stuff, and she was on the way out the door. So I hit up Olivia with about that, which you just mentioned,
Yeah.
but I also wanted to ask her about the daycare thing. And I had forgotten, but I emailed her 6 days ago and haven't heard a response back.
Okay, and that's fine,
So,
and that's
no,
something we can
that's different.
deal with once we.
But the direct
get
answer to your
it.
question is, these people are working with us very
Great.
well. Oh, one more
So
point.
we're-
Susie's entertaining the idea of visiting us somewhere before town meeting or one of the other meetings in February, not the 22nd, because she just thinks it might be the good thing to do, come and talk to us.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can talk about
All
that.
right, so basically Articles 1 through 6 are the same that they always are. To elect a moderator, town clerk, treasurer, collector of income taxes, other officers, and accept the auditor's report. Article 7, the first part of the verbiage is the same as it always is about approving the general and highway fund expenditures and net of non-tax budget revenues for town as follows. Then we get into the specifics of what the numbers are this year. So, just going line by line, the amount to be raised for the general fund of 125,047 reflects everything that we discussed previously the last time we went through the budget worksheet, except for one thing that I just want to point out, was that the second time we went through, Guy had mentioned that we needed to budget for FACT TV broadcasting cost.
Right.
The last time, the most recent time we went through that budget, that had not been added in. It now has been added in.
Okay,
So that ups that by $1,000, obviously. But we still end up being down slightly on that number from last year because we projected slightly more revenues. And despite the NEMRIC increase and all those other increases, we didn't end up increasing our expenditures by much on that. Okay, then the highway fund, 157,679, the only change to the highway fund budgeted numbers from our previous discussion is that Sarah and Samara realized that we did not have a line item for stormwater permit fee, which is now an annual fee that we have to pay. So that has been added.
$1,100.
Of $1140, yeah. So that increased the highway fund from what we were discussing previously by that, although that is still also down from last year.
Sweet.
By, I guess I could actually compare to last year. It's down from 158,270, so it's down, whatever, $600, something like that.
Okay.
The general fund, we're down about, whatever that is, $80, something like that. Then we get to the fiscal 2019 general fund surplus, which again, the books for that have not yet been combed over by the auditors. There's a possibility that this could change, but Samara and Sarah have gone through it a couple of times, so I'm hopeful that this number doesn't change. We ended 2019 in the general fund with a surplus of $23,484.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the plus?
you're reading the, if you're reading the warning, you're seeing this.
Sorry.
If you read the warning, you will see all
I
this.
see it.
Line 7,
We're
Article 7.
23,000 in the plus?
From 2019, yes. Yeah,
Yeah, the brackets
Like it's
confuse
paying
me.
for the building.
yeah, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
What we don't want to do is like we did a few years ago when I looked at the book, which said that there was a surplus, but it was actually a deficit with no indication unless you added up the numbers. So this is the proper accounting way of expressing this. So applying that surplus to the funds brings the total municipal taxes to be raised down to $259,242, which would of
So that's
course
it.
then be about 23-ish thousand less than.
I was under the impression that the surplus has to be voted by the voters to either reduce the budget or to be
That's-
saved in some way, so.
Yeah.
That's what it
So,
is in the.
so you're taking 179, I'm sorry, 157 and 125,
125 plus 157 minus 23, all that
259.
ends up being 259,242.
okay, so you're assuming that we're gonna deduct that 23,000 from the budget?
From the amount of tax,
Right.
from the
But you're saying,
fiscal 21
you're saying it has to be
tax.
approved by the town.
Right, it has to be,
Wasn't it
This-
usually written as a separate article?
yeah, it's usually, yeah, the surplus,
Yeah, that's correct, like last year.
No, that what has happened in the past, when we wanted to target the surplus
okay,
and not refund it to the taxpayers,
Okay.
that has to be warned as a separate article.
So
If we, like with a deficit, I mean, or with a surplus, my understanding from Samara's the one who crafted this, is that this is how we present that we are applying the surplus from
Back to the
2019 to the essentially
Which is what
tax
we've done
bill
before.
for fiscal 21.
I think the reason.
If we wanted to take $20,000 of it and put it somewhere else and not
Then we'd
refund
have
it
to.
to the, and this is of course all for a surplus from the general fund.
Right.
Any surplus that was in the
Highway
highway fund
rolls over.
automatically rolls back.
I think
This
that's
is
why I
just for the
question
general
it, is
fund.
because we had a surplus one year of $4,000 and
Right.
that's where we got the,
And
that's where we voted to have a.
Capital improvement fund.
surplus, yeah, capital
Right.
improvement fund.
So
Right,
now.
and to just clarify that, like in the case where we had the article to put the $4,000 into the capital improvement fund. If that had been voted down,
Right.
this is what
That's
would have been refunded to the taxpayers.
But in order.
That is the default assumption unless we want to warn an article to do
But
something different.
in order to finalize this.
And the auditors still have to look at this, and
That's what I'm
Frank
saying.
Rucker may have a view on maybe this should be displayed differently in some way, or wording should be different. Unfortunately, the only example I could find in our recent town reports was from a deficit that we had in 2013, 2014, and the wording was essentially the same as this, but
Okay.
worse.
That's good.
So we need to finalize it. I guess my question is, the auditors, when are they gonna get this done, do you know?
The auditors won't be done until close to the end of the month.
Okay,
Probably.
but in order to finalize this warning, we need that number.
Well, we have the number.
Yeah, but in order to decide if it's gonna be moved one way or another, whether it's gonna be.
What do you mean,
Just,
moved one
whether the general fund surplus is gonna be, used to, lower municipal taxes, or whether it's gonna be used for something else.
Well, that's our decision, that has nothing to do with the auditors.
Okay.
I'm just telling you that as of now, assuming that there are no changes that the auditors make, and again, these are numbers that have been produced by our treasurer and double-checked by our former treasurer, so I like to believe they won't change.
Yeah, probably, if they are submitted,
And especially that surplus was predicated on the end of last June, so hopefully those books are pretty tight at this point. So yeah, then the decision is, I mean, I will say, I'll say for myself, I think it should be refunded as part of the, I don't think any of this money should be targeted for anything.
okay?
I have a quick
Yes,
procedural type.
Sure.
So if the auditors do find some sort of minor discrepancy, like if it was like, if we had $200 less of a surplus, would they just like tell you and then alter it? Like we wouldn't really have to change too much, would we?
yeah, we would. We'd have to vote it. We'd have to vote it again, or as has happened sometimes in the past, if the auditors don't, you know, it's possible that the town report could go out and the number could change after the town report is out, and we might have to amend the number at town meeting. That's
Okay.
happened before.
But if they do their meeting 2 weeks from now and it's effed up, then we just change it
At our next
directly
meeting,
before.
we'd have to vote that.
Yeah, hopefully, those guys have gotten their, I think as of today, Sarah and Samara are pretty much done with all of the things that need to go to the auditors.
Right.
They've spoken to the auditors. My hope is that within the next 2 weeks, the auditors will at least be comfortable with these numbers. But we'll see, I
I
can't.
think it'd be appropriate to have everybody say whether they feel this money should be returned to the voters, or they should be used for
Sure,
something
yeah,
else.
yeah,
Like,
let's-
you know what I'm gonna say, so that's no secret.
You get to go last then. Gwen, what's your feeling about the fiscal 19 surplus as to whether we offset it to the 21
Well, I think
or
to offset it,
target
you'd have to
something
write
for
an
something
article
else?
and have that all voted.
You mean if you applied it, if we
Right.
say, if we held it, because basically we're talking about either essentially giving it back to the taxpayers or putting it aside for some future purpose. Designating it to a fund and putting it to a future purpose.
Just one
What's your-
quick question. Leland and Gray never got back to you with the foundation for appropriations?
No, what they sent us before the last meeting was a thank you for the last time.
Okay, no, I just,
I mean, that, you know, someone can bring it up and move to add it at town meeting, hopefully, if people want to. Sorry, Glenn.
I'm still thinking.
Okay, all right. Joseph, do you have a,
Yeah, I think we
Opinion
should
at the moment?
definitely refund it because I think that that keeping it for something else is they're more inclined to feel as though they're pressured, I feel, as to give it to us than if we were to say, hey, we want to raise 20, we just put $23,000 extra into the budget. You know, so I think that doing anything but giving that amount of money back is kind of, I don't know, I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. I think,
No, I think the $23,000 was a reflection of how frugal the town can be.
You
And
think?
how we've done,
You
yeah.
think?
you know, yes. So when I see that
Right,
23,000,
and
I
it's,
think,
and it's also, I'll say, a reflection of if you go through the budget, you'll see where part of it is. Went through a year where we spent nothing on legal fees.
right.
So that was $3,500 that we had. I mean, it was a reflection of frugality and also on some level luck.
Well, I think when,
In some cases.
they see that we're getting back is that the select board has been doing their job. And if it gets to the point where we need something else, then it has to be voted on or changed.
Okay.
And
Shelley,
again, they can,
you next, sorry, I'm not the
Yeah,
moderator.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I think last town meeting day, I was in favor of that smaller amount, whatever, what was it, for?
4,500.
And I was in favor of, I voted in favor of keeping that for, paying that forward in a sense, but I just feel like this is a significant amount.
Yeah.
It's a significant enough amount that it would be not, I think we should apply it as it's written, and allowed to offset the taxes this year, because it is a much more significant amount, and people might actually feel that a little bit more than they were gonna feel.
Good point.
yeah.
I kind of agree with everybody, except
Exactly.
I feel that the needs of the town should be told as to what's needed. You know what I'm gonna talk about, I'm not gonna talk about. And I think that they should be given the choice. I think that they should be given the choice to either do what they want with the $23,000.
Well, I would argue that they are being given that choice by being given back to them.
Because they could vote, they
And
could
then
not
when
vote
we,
for that.
when we have to raise the budget next year, or when we have to spend money to do something else.
Say a furnace went,
Right.
Will they remember?
I mean, what would be the, well, that's not our responsibility is
Well, I'm
not
just saying,
to.
does it hurt? Does it hurt to say, look, we ain't done a great job, no, we put it that way. $23,485 is a surplus. These are needs in the town. Would you like us to lower your taxes? Would you like us to put money towards spending on things that we might need? Talk about it and give them the choice. I don't see the harm in it.
Well, but what would it be? What's the specific?
Well, you know what I'm
Because we
saying.
have to designate it, well, and I'll tell you, I'm not gonna agree with that.
Okay, well,
So-
but tell the people at town meeting might want to agree with it.
I think,
Well,
I think that a more
but-
honest approach, if
Uh-huh.
you're
If-
looking for $23,000 to paint the building,
Yeah.
I think a more honest approach would be to refund this money and then ask for $23,000 to be added to the budget. I just think that that's a more, that's just like, right there, I'm asking for 23 grand to paint the building. And then you vote on that, just on that merit. Just on the, asking for the money to paint the building alone, nothing to do with the tax surplus at all. I think
Oh, yeah,
well,
it's
or-
very specific.
Bruce,
I
hang on,
think
hang on, I want to make a point. The other thing I'll say is that we spent quite a bit of time going through the budget. And where we saw a need for budgets to be increased because we thought there was money that was needed, we did that. To now somewhat be deciding, oh wait, now that I know that we have a surplus, I can think of something that we potentially need money for, I think is also
You think it's being disingenuous?
not disingenuous, but I don't think it's, first off, we don't know what the situation is with the painting, let's say. We don't know what the situation is with various maintenance things. So at this point, to try to decide that an arbitrary amount of money that just happens to be what we had as a surplus is what we want to set aside for something. The other thing is that anything that we would vote and set aside would be designated explicitly for that use. I think the reality is we're not prepared to try to suggest a better use for this money to the townspeople than giving it back to them this year. Next year might be different.
What do you think, Shelley?
I think it's much too large of an amount to put it under a very general fund or a blanket hold like last year, because last year's was like, And
But supposing if it was something specific, like painting the building, you have a problem with that?
well, yeah, cause the building's gonna cost $37,000, so we should
Put
be
it
giving the
towards that
money
fund.
back, and then you should be giving the money back and then asking for $37,000, and they can do the math for themselves, that you're actually asking for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think it should be two separate issues,
Okay.
yeah.
I think too, with the economy, the way it's been, and everybody's been a little discouraged with everything going up and with the way the world is, I think it's not, they're gonna be happy that we actually did something where they're gonna get something back.
It is their money.
It is their money.
Right.
It is their
And
money.
they asked us to, as a town, to run their town.
It
And
is
we
their money.
did, and we were frugal, and we had a few dollars left over, and they should have that back.
And Shelby's got a point in as much as she's saying, if you're gonna wanna get $25,000, $30,000, $35,000, you should say that's what you want. Here's your money.
That's
You want
exactly
that.
what I said.
That's what you
I
want.
just said, I just said.
She just said it.
You said it, same.
And also, Chris,
Okay.
I think it's important to note that they could say, somebody could stand up at town meeting, one of the constituency, and say, hey, no, I don't, I wanna amend Article 7 and I wanna,
That's true.
so there's just, I think that.
Yeah, it's true.
We're not giving them the choice to say
Okay.
we want our surplus to
Okay.
be, and it used in a different way, we're just saying, hey, we don't really, we didn't have a, you had a surplus, this is what would happen if we just run things as the
Right.
standard operating procedure when you have a surplus. This is
Right.
what we
Yeah.
got.
They're gonna look at this and see that, we're asking them to approve a budget, and they're gonna see that $23,000 that we're giving back. Someone may decide to say, couldn't we do something else with that money, and that's their prerogative, that's what town meeting's for.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's
I'm good with that.
yep.
I'm glad I wrote it.
Okay, so we're all okay with Article 7 as it is currently drafted?
Yes.
Okay. Article 8 is boilerplate. Article 9 is the appropriations based on what we've gone through previously. One thing to note, if you have a previous copy of the appropriations, there was a hidden row in the spreadsheet, and something was actually being added up twice. So the number we're actually at for the appropriations that we approved were 5906. Which
That's even
is
better.
down from last year, basically by the difference of Leland and Gray not being included, plus the addition to more free library. Because more free libraries.
And this amount on Article 7 reflects all the amounts that you have approved at all our meetings. In particular, I'm thinking about the Fact TV and everything else.
Yeah.
This includes all those as part of it, okay?
Yep, all of those are in there. Fact TV is in there, the stormwater
Yep.
permit is in
Okay.
there, as well as all of the other numbers and things that we went through during all those meetings. And all of that is in this, everybody has an updated version of the budget worksheet that ties back to this.
And you're sure about the $1,100 for the stormwater permit?
Yeah, I saw it in there.
No, I thought,
1140.
I thought the figure was predicated on population, I didn't think, I wasn't sure that it was $1,100 for our town, but if that's,
1140 is what we paid last year,
oh, okay,
so that's what we budgeted for the coming year.
wow, okay, yeah, it is what it is.
And before, we didn't have any budget for it. Okay, so is everyone in agreement with Article 9? Nothing about Article 9 that anybody notices as being? Okay, then Articles 10 and 11, as we discussed at our last meeting, are separate articles for the two new appropriations for people to vote up or down. Article 12 is the typical one about current taxes from the town treasurer. Then we get to Article 13 for recycling. So I unfortunately think we need to increase what we estimate our recycling costs might be for fiscal year 2021 by another $4,000. I've told you about the fact that in a worst case scenario, I'm hopeful this won't happen, but we can't control it ultimately. We might have to start renting bins for the recycling if the district decides to pull the bins back. I don't think that's likely to happen. I am now on a advisory committee to decide what to do with those bins, though other members on that committee do not have bins, so it's kind of a balance.
So
of
when this
people on
comes
committee.
up with that amount, you'd be able to explain why it's so high, so that they can understand why it increased so much?
Right, well, and part of it is because the cost of doing all this keeps going up.
Yeah.
It was 18
And the
last year.
reality is that it was 18 last year, and we project at the moment to come in, I mean, it's hard to know, because it's monthly, it's going up. I
Yeah.
mean, the processing fee has somewhat stabilized for now, maybe, but, I mean, it continues to go up.
Is that the only fee that keeps going up regularly?
The processing fee is mostly what has been going up. The trucking fee went up $9 a haul,
$12.
$12 a
Yep.
haul, yeah, from
130
130 to 142. $12 a haul at the beginning of this fiscal year.
But that's not
They,
lining.
Triple T, no, and they say they do their best barring something unforeseen like a war in the Middle East that might
that
affect
happened.
fuel prices. They do their best to not increase anything within 2 years for hauling, so I'm hopeful that our hauling won't go up again for a couple of years, but it might.
So,
The biggest thing is the unknown, the two unknowns of if we had to start renting bins, that would probably cost us a couple $1,000s more a year. And the processing, I mean, I talked to several people in the business, including Peter at Triple T, and nobody knows what's gonna happen, basically. I mean, everyone seems to think the price can't continue to just go up forever, but it has continued to go up.
Inflation.
So the reality is, I mean, honestly, we could get to the end of next fiscal year and find that 22 wasn't enough.
Yeah.
We really have no way of, we can only control some parts of it, and which we're doing, which Guy is doing, which is controlling the number of hauls we have is about the only thing that we can do unless we're going to do something else. So, you know, if we're going to, if we think we want to continue, that we want to give people the choice of continuing to offer recycling as we have it right now, I think $22,000 is the number we have to put out there for people.
And tell them the
People
old.
have to decide if
Tell them everything else.
well, I'm just afraid if you increase it a little more, it's really gonna create some problems with the people, I think. They may
I think this
rethink.
is-
Because this 22, does that also include also our Wyndham Solid Waste dues that we have to
This
pay?
is just recycling, that's in the, that's separate.
All right, so basically for recycling, the town is probably paying close to $30,000.
No, for recycling, we're paying 22,000, well, we're right.
And
Wyndham Solid Waste is a separate expenditure, which we budget and it's in the
right,
general fund.
no, and I understand it, but isn't that part of all the recycling? No, okay,
No, I mean,
because they do the toxic pickups and so forth.
well, yeah, I get, I guess when I'm saying recycling, and I mean, I think people have understood.
No, and I understand what
Maybe
you're
they
saying.
haven't. We're talking about the
Yes,
recycling that we
right.
offer at the
Okay.
lot. Just out of curiosity, I would like to ask people, what do you do currently for trash removal?
Okay,
What do you do,
I
Bruce?
cart it to the dump.
Okay,
I separate the,
I didn't need to know like below my belt, but you take it to Wyndham Solid Waste, you take your
Here.
trash to Wyndham Solid Waste.
depends.
Right,
The stuff that's recyclable for the most part, I put here. But
No,
my
your
trash
trash.
goes to the dumpster. I usually do it every 2 or 3 months.
Okay, all right. Shelby, what do you do?
Franklin.
Yep. Joseph?
We have a dumpster for the business.
Who's the?
But who's
service
the-
it?
Oh,
Hauler.
good enough.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Gwen?
we take it to the recycling.
Dot, what do you do?
I go to that.
Okay, so the thing to point out, and this is something that I think the point needs to be made probably at town meeting, so, I mean, I think people understand this, but just so there's no illusions of people. For people who take their trash already to Wyndham Solid Waste, you could be taking your recycling there and it would cost you nothing more.
Right.
That's right.
For people who have private haulers, it depends. I mean, do you have bi-weekly pickup? Weekly pickup. So I think it's possible that you could start getting your recycling only picked up on one week and your trash picked up the other week
Yeah, we haven't looked into
for
it, but
possibly the same amount of money that you're paying.
I would assume you could, just based on what I mean, based on our usage right now, I don't think that, as long as they offer that, I don't see why we would have a problem with that. I don't think our bill would.
Depending on where you live,
Yeah.
for some of us, like on my road, they only pick up every other week.
Yeah.
If I wanted to have them pick up recycling, I would have to pay them
Extra.
$10 extra a month for them to do that. But the point is, for some of us, based on our circumstance, even the prorated $22,000 cost of this, it's still, for me personally, this is still cheaper for me. But for a lot of people, it isn't.
Yeah.
And so we'll make the point at town meeting that this is not necessarily good for everyone financially. I think we also will need to make the point that we don't know what might happen to our trash dumping situation if we didn't have those
Well, we
bins,
got it.
but that's a different
Well, like I
subject, but anyway.
brought up at town meeting, this is the only service the town offers. And more importantly, my concern is not for me, or for you, or anybody else in this room, it's for the people that can't take, or can't afford to have their stuff hauled away. And that, I guess that's really what the determination is, whether or not the town's willing to keep forking over all this money on and up and up and up and up.
Right.
Now, frankly, there's gonna be a boiling point. I've been in this town long enough, they can look at this number and hit the freaking roof. So, we'll see.
Well, and there may honestly become a point where people stop offering this service,
It's okay.
because it won't make financial sense for them anymore.
Because Newfane doesn't do
Possibly.
it, like, well, Towns has got the station up there, and I don't know what the other towns up the valley, but,
Did you say you're
anyway.
gonna add 4,000 to this number?
No, sorry, that's 4,000 up from what
Okay,
we've
okay.
warned
$2,000,
previous.
just to dump
Uh,
recyclables.
Did they, when you spoke to any of these people, did they mention if they knew what was happening to the recyclable material? Like, is it getting recycled? Cause I know in some places it's just like sitting somewhere.
I think a lot of it probably is sitting somewhere. I mean, it's, we only deal with Triple T who
Then,
ship all of their stuff to Casella, that
yeah.
what Casella does with it, nobody necessarily knows.
I guess I was just curious, cause that's obviously a big part in the public mind is the environmental factor of recycling.
Yeah,
There's
right.
obviously a big argument about that.
There's a big argument about that, yeah, that's true. Okay, so everyone's okay with that,
Yeah.
that's what we're wanting? Okay.
So what, you're gonna increase it to 26?
No, sorry, it's staying 22.
Oh.
When I said 4,000, I meant that's 4,000 more than what we
Did last year.
did last year,
Okay.
sorry for confusion.
Which is how much percent for acre, 25%?
18.
18% increase? 18.
Yeah, no, whatever, 4 divided by 18 is.
12, 16.
I can't do math.
25%, yeah, I know it. Not like 40 either.
Okay, so
What
Article
article?
14 is the article that we were instructed from the
Oh, yeah.
union
West
that
River
we now have to handle as part of our portion of town meeting, since there won't be a different portion of town meeting.
Uh-huh.
So it's to elect one West River Modified Union Education District school director who's a resident of Brookline for a 3-year term. That's the wording that they gave us once you fix 3 or 4 of the grammatical mistakes that were in it.
You're very good at catching this.
Well, something about to elect on one, made me think, I'm not sure that's right.
Are they campaigning, or they're doing the campaigning for it all, for the position? Doesn't matter.
No, it's just their name's gonna be brought up and.
Yeah, it'll be like with any other,
You just say
Like
Leanne.
a select board.
somebody will nominate, yeah, it'll just be nominations from the floor and all that stuff. It's
Just
just,
thinking campaign.
it gets handed, I mean, this is what they've told us, hopefully
Yeah.
that's accurate. And then 15 is the standard to transact any other business come before the meeting.
Yeah, I have a question.
And then dated today and all of us.
Has the legislators been notified about the change in the town meeting, or if they have, did they say anything?
Maybe they won't come.
I don't know.
What?
I do not.
We'll put that in there.
I figure we have plenty of time to worry about the logistics of the
Okay.
actual town meeting.
Okay.
Well, not plenty of time, but we have some amount of time.
Still make a phone call or two.
Okay, so are there
Done
any
with that, right?
suggested changes to this? Well, we have to vote it, but my belief is,
We have to wait until it's complete.
because we have it, because we're not making any changes to the printed copy that is before everyone,
We can go.
unlike in previous years, I do not have to read this entire thing
No,
No.
before
No.
we vote it, which has happened each of the last several
Yeah.
Yes,
years.
it has.
So I would like to make a motion that we approve the warning for the 2020 Brookline Town Meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bruce. Any other discussion before we vote it? Hearing none. Okay, all those in favor of approving the warning as presented for the 2020 Brookline Town Meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Excellent.
good job.
All right.
That's great.
Okay, so then we're now down to 6C, Road Commissioner. So we were just gonna kind of talk briefly about whether Tom Stats had been approached and was still interested, in whether there were other people that anyone had thought of or wanted to consider asking to come talk to us about road commissioner at the next meeting. The idea is that at the next meeting, we will invite anyone who's actually interested, and we will actually handle the appointment of that at that point, but we were gonna kind of touch base on it. Did you reach out to Tom Stats, or did someone reach out to Tom
Yes,
Stats?
did you talk to Tom? Just
I talked to
okay.
Tom
Not since
3
our
months
last
ago.
meeting. Okay, cool. So I guess I mentioned this briefly maybe the other night, but I was speaking to Sam Bourne, who's Tom Sad's nephew, and Tom is, I didn't actually speak directly with Tom. I believe he's still interested, but there was a clarifying thing that that Sam wanted me to ask, that to discuss here, and then see if they might be interested in it together. Sam brought up the idea that maybe the two of them together, or any two people, could act as the road commissioner, you know, between two people. His personal concerns of that were that he is quite comfortable with the physical aspects of road commissioner, or whatever they entail.
Who's he?
Sam Bourne.
Okay.
But he is, he's a little bit younger than me, and he personally is a little wary about taking on all of the paperwork
Okay.
aspects of
The administrative end.
Yes,
Because Tom is very capable of it. Okay.
yeah, and so he was, he knows that in the past that's something that's happened, and he thinks that if Tom would be interested, that he would be really happy, Sam would be very happy to work with Tom, the two of them being the road commissioner, and
In the
they.
past, is something, can you clarify what you mean by the past? Is something-
Sam says that in the past, and I did not know this, but he says in the past, in Brookline, he believes that the road commissioner position has been filled by two individuals.
I don't know.
He may be
I've never heard
mistaken,
nothing.
maybe he was speaking, maybe it was a different town. Either way, he wanted to bring up the idea that that's something he would be really comfortable with. He thinks that they could split the duties and be more effective, the two of them, than just one person.
Okay, question, is he a resident?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and how long has he been in town?
His entire life.
Okay, now,
Hey, what's that?
Frank,
Bruce, hang on.
well, we'll more than a couple people here, we'll get into that.
Bruce.
I want to ask Mark something.
Okay, maybe let some of the rest of us participate if you have a
Okay,
chance.
go ahead.
Okay. No, go ahead, Mark. Mark, what's your thinking about Tom Stetson, Sanborn?
Together, do you know them both? You know
Oh,
Tom?
yes. Yeah, I'm very, very well acquainted with him.
Both of them?
Yep.
Okay. Where's your head at?
It sounds like it could work, yeah,
I think probably what's in our best interest, rather than getting into specifics of who, because again, that's what we're gonna discuss at the 22nd when we can have, and we can validate that multiple, I think it's more conceptually, would we see any problem with having
Which is what.
co-road commissioners, essentially?
Yeah, I see no problem.
I don't
with
see a
that.
problem with it, Shelby.
Yeah, I see no problem with that. I think that just like in a communication front, if that were to happen, we just have to be, there has to be a clear delineation, I think, of
Yep.
kind of like a
Right.
procedural who's first,
Whose
somebody has to be
responsibilities are what.
overall, yeah, and just have there be clarity on that, but I don't see why that can't be a good thing, and I think especially if there's somebody with more experience and less, it's gonna encourage people to be involved, and then maybe that the person who's the younger would be able to learn and grow into a role, and then we don't have to be so concerned with the future of some of these positions.
Tom knows a lot.
Ultimately, they just still,
Guy, what do you think?
ultimately, they still report to the select board.
Yeah.
And and I think it would be a good team. I think both of them have a lot to offer to the town. They've been here for a long time. Maybe you should just check with VLCT, see if they have anything to say about that, but I don't see why it should. I just don't know, but doesn't mean it can't be done.
I can,
Reach out to them? Well, I was gonna ask Gwen if,
oh, okay.
when you're in
Yeah,
the
we can
office,
do
if
that.
you could, or if between you and Guy,
Yeah,
could reach out to
okay.
them.
As long as Mark's good with it, I mean, that's.
But the bottom line is
That's my
that,
paramount.
My biggest thing too is, the physical work, the maintenance, I don't have a problem with. I think most of it is easy to decide what needs to be done. It's the granting paperwork stuff that is.
That's the hassle.
Well, and also, I mean, I think to some extent, as long as the relationship is good and stuff, the more people to be able to be involved in figuring things out and whatever, the better. As long as, that everybody.
no, I think it's a good.
Again, as long as everybody knows, sort of what Mark's responsibilities are versus what the co-road commissioner's responsibilities are, and not,
Yeah, I think you have to establish the pecking order, for sure, just to let everybody know. who
well, like you
reports
say,
to them.
ultimately, all of those positions report to the select board.
But
it's
decisions
really-
made out in the field.
It's really more, it's really more about just being clear on what people's responsibilities are, as opposed to, everyone reports to the select board, but what are each of their responsibilities and, areas of expertise or whatever, areas of responsibility. Okay, so is everybody basically in agreement that pursuing a co-road commissioner situation is something we should look into? And do you want to reach back out to both of them and,
Yeah.
assuming they're open to that idea, invite them to the meeting on the 22nd?
Yep, I'll reach out to them and I'll get back to you prior to you setting the agenda, so you can add them to like the
Okay.
schedule
Great.
members.
Perfect. Great. Awesome, thank you for dealing with that. Okay, so we're down to, if my chicken scratch is right, we're down to the added last old business item, which is town health officer. So, according to the state of Vermont, I'm now the town health officer, according to the packet of information I got today with
And your certificate is in the
my
mail.
certificate and everything. Yeah, I got it, I think you probably got one, I got one also. So, I know you're looking into what are our actual responsibilities, how far have you,
So
I
did
opened the envelope, that's about as far as I got, so.
That's good, it's a step in
was
the right,
something.
yeah, you did it.
I thought it was something
Yeah.
exciting, but it was this.
I'm
I
sorry.
wouldn't have opened it.
So I read the book that Gwen gave me, and it's annoyingly vague and suggestive. So my next step is to read the actual, because it's so much fun to read statutes dry, read the actual statute.
Just highlight the book.
No,
The statutes are crazy.
Well, yeah, but there really isn't a lot of clarity in the book on whether you're obligated to be on call, or, I mean, it tells you what you're responsible for, but it doesn't, like, but it doesn't say that, I mean, you know what I mean, so if we're establishing somebody wants to take on this role, like, is the town health officer legally allowed to say, hey, these are my hours where you can call me about this, and only in this event can you call, am I to be contacted 24/7, and, or if it's this situation, you shouldn't be calling me, you should be calling this person, like, that just kind of making it maybe, if it's possible, to make it more of a clearly defined role, because like you said, like, you get a call and you're like, you have to figure out where the line is, but also, should you be getting calls, or whoever the town health officer, should they be getting calls at 2 AM, and are they obligated to answer that call or respond? And that wasn't clear from the book about, so great, you're in charge of, emergency stuff, but what does that mean? If it's the middle of the night and there's a plumbing issue in a tenant's, landlord situation, should the town health officer be being called to come out? Probably not, in my opinion, but I wanna know if we're able to say that legally, like, there's a line that the town officer isn't obligated, so that maybe if somebody is interested in this role, they can have maybe boundaries that are a little more set and make it a more manageable role, considering it seems like it can be really overwhelming. So I'm just wondering what boundaries can legally be set, defining the role and the parameters and the amount of on-call that this person's responsible for.
Okay, so if you read the book, you'll also notice that they are going to come out with, by the end of this month, a whole new role, they're changing it all, they've been collecting data and information. I think it's the end of this month or beginning of February, they're gonna be coming out with those parameters, be more specific, because they find that, town health officers are all volunteer positions pretty much, and it's just become too overwhelming for them, so that is something that we are looking forward to getting more information on.
Yeah, so hopefully maybe there's just something that
But it
comes
has to
out
be-
that's really explicit.
Yeah, it
But-
really has to be for the public welfare, not just a private welfare. It's like, for instance, I got called for a rabid raccoon yesterday with that got quilled, and of course, they call me, the Humane Society's calling me. I know to say, no, you call the game warden. Here's his phone number, and maybe what came out and disposed of the animal. But just to be able to then pass on, like, for instance, tonight, no, you call this agency, you call, just to be able to provide who calls, that's what they want, some kind of relief, just instead of letting people hang.
Yeah, and that seems what really, like, the core of the role of the town health officer is when there are, like, it seems like in lieu of there being a clear answer, being able to connect people with resources. Half that book was just resources, like connect with here or there. But if you're somebody, if the role is something that's connected with resources, I don't see any reason why the person who's a town health officer should be obligated to answer a call at 1 in the morning, or, you know what I mean, be on call. I don't, that doesn't.
No, I don't think anybody's on call.
Okay, cause that's the vibe I was getting when you guys were talking about how.
That's the dog people, that was, the incident was happening at that time.
Yeah.
And that was,
But you didn't feel obligated to have to attend to that in the moment.
I did, I made a phone call.
Okay.
I made a phone call to the dog's owner at that time at 1 in the morning,
Right, and we don't wanna get dragged back into
No.
the
Yeah.
discussion.
So anyway, so I
Health
just,
officer stuff is a little different.
so I've read the health officer thing, and then I was gonna look into the actual statute and see if there's any clear guidance. Not like, this is the role, like day-to-day stuff, but more like clear guidance on what the health officer as, a town position is legally obligated to do or not to do.
There's just 4 things that we need to do, it's listed in the book, I can go over it with you, but.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'd suggest it's something that we continue to have on our minds of how we can sculpt it in such a way that we might be able to convince somebody other than us to do it moving forward. Certainly for the time being, like I say, as far as the state of Vermont is concerned, I'm the town health officer. Dot and I will discuss afterwards how we do, whether maybe whether we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of touch on that, and we'll put it back on the agenda from time to time until we figure out how to rope somebody into it. Not really. Okay, moving on now to summary updates. Mr. Tanza.
Dog licensing is now taking place, we've sold 2 already. And I just want to remind people that they have until April 1st to renew their dog license, and how important it is, because it's also a form of rabies control. There will be a rabies clinic on March 14th at the Newbrook Fire Station from 9 until 1, or 10 to 1, I'm sorry. And other than that, we've been doing all the end of the year reports. It's been kind of busy in the office, but things are running smoothly and we're doing very well. I just want to remind you that this is going to be a very big election season. The presidential primary is March 3rd. So that means I'm going to need a lot of people to help count, help do the ballots, do everything. It's going to be a long process, and
Yeah.
We're gonna have town meeting the night of March 2nd.
well, we would have the same day.
Otherwise, if we had changed it, it would have been the same day.
Yeah, no, I know.
And then we got that.
So yes,
Oh, we've done
We're gonna have
it 3 years.
The organizational meeting.
3 years we've done
That
it.
sucks.
I had to
Yeah,
see
it's
you
a
right
tough
when you
time.
were at town meeting.
Then there's also,
Anyway, sorry, guy.
okay, so March
Yeah.
3rd is the presidential primary. March 25th will be an Australian ballot for the modified Union School District. That will be another all-day affair. So it's gonna be, the next couple of months are gonna be very busy for you and for the town itself, because we have a lot of things to get ready going into the new year. And that's it. Thank you. And Gwen's doing her thing in the vault. Are you on 22 or still?
22.
Okay.
Remember, I have to go individual
Yep.
pages.
But we're still saving money, we're getting things done, and slowly but surely. Also, when we get to the point, I'd like to use this closet over here for our people who come in title searches and so forth, that they, instead of coming to see me, can go right to a computer, look up everything, punch it out, pay me as they leave. And that would be, pay the town, and then that would eliminate some problems also. So we're moving, we have new election equipment that came in for people who are handicapped or have visual impairments, or for whatever reasons, we have a way that they can still vote. So absentee ballots, as soon as I get the ballot, and I don't know, it should be very soon, absentee ballots are becoming more and more popular. It's a real nice thing to do. The only thing is that once you voted, you're voted. You can't ask for the absentee ballot back.
Of course.
So, well, no, some people have a change of heart, or they see something that maybe they shouldn't have done, but just so you know that once you vote absentee,
It's over.
it's over. And that's it. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Mark, what's going on?
Well, today I worked with Archie Clark. We had a few places in town where the sun beamed in and created some potholing on the dirt roads. Some of it was probably due to some salt being tracked off the road by vehicles. But anyway, we used some of the stock material that we had at the town yard, loaded it and dumped it, and I leveled it out with a grader. Some places just shoveled some crushed stone into potholes to better the surface. Also, due to the weather, we used up a majority of the last salt order. So I made a phone call today to get our third load of salt for this winter. which it was not called in till close to noon, so it didn't show up today. I assume it'll be here in the morning. We also had a request, Green Mountain Power is looking into furthering the electricity up Putney Mountain, and they had their representatives state where the poles would be located, where they would like to place them. And I was asked to go and review where they are to make sure that the town of Brookline's okay with where they're placed, and they appeared to be well off the highway maintenance area that I called and gave them the okay to go ahead, and they're gonna be cutting some trees for the poles and just to allow the wires to go overhead of the road, so that's at all of their expense. The other thing...
Excuse me, when are they gonna start that, Mark? Did they say?
I'm still waiting for a call back, because I had a couple questions, and I haven't received a call back yet. So, anything that would you like me to forward to you when they're gonna do it?
Well, I'd get my snotty nose in there and get some wood if they'd let me, but probably not. But,
Yeah, I believe the landowners on
We'll
both
get
sides
first
get
dibs.
the first dip on that.
You can keep that in
I
mind.
believe it's gonna be a process that'll happen this winter while the road's closed, because when they're doing their process, they'll be taking up most of the road.
Are they extending any electricity, or are they just replacing poles?
They're extending,
Going up?
I believe John Swing has plans to put a sugar house above his
Right, yep.
pasture, and it's the
But are they going further?
the power to that point, it's for that point only,
Okay.
as far as I know.
Mark, I'm curious, are they doing some other stuff like on Grassy Brook Road as well? Did they mention something? Cause I've seen, they've got a bunch of they put stakes in my front yard and they put a bunch of pink tie on stuff.
No, the only thing that I received notice for was, to see if I approved of the stakes that are in the roadside on Putney Mountain. There was nothing else mentioned to me. So I'm unaware of any other process. I know that they give authority to have trees removed for power line right away, and I have a couple projects in town that, I'm inviting them to come and look at to get those trees removed, but nothing on Grassy Brook Road. It's other roads in town. So if I hear something, I would be glad to pass it on to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then the other thing, I had made a call knowing that we didn't have a mowing machine yet, and I called and reserved the over-the-rail mower for the first week of July. And each time I call, the representative salesperson asks if we're ready to purchase our own machine. So I told him that we're thinking about it, and that would he send us information, and they have 6 or 7 machines that they rent out, that after they get so many hours on them, they sell them. And so I asked him if he would send us a list of what he had, just mainly for pricing, just to see, to go with our purchasing issue if we do continue. So he said they weren't at the point yet to put prices on them, but it would be very soon, and he would mail a package out with machinery that they have for sale, and he's gonna throw in the price of a brand new one with an over-rail mower. And that's just information for us to use for comparisons down the road.
Yeah. Did they increase the price for the overall, for the rental?
Nope, I have it written down here, it was, I believe, the same as last year. It's $3,300 a week, and that's unlimited hours.
Okay.
And the date will be July 6th to July 10th. is the rental.
When was that accounted for?
I guess say that again?
What was the dates?
The
July
date that
6th
we're
and
gonna
10th.
rent it for our mowing will be between July 6th through July 10th. They're shut down for the 4th week and they don't do any rentals that week, so I had to bump it up one. The other option would have been June 22nd to June 26th, and I just felt that
It's too early.
Yeah.
it'd be better after.
Yeah.
So I guess, Guy, to answer your question, I think it's $100
Yeah.
above last year. So it's 33, but it's 40 plus hours. If we
Yeah,
get our
before we
40
had-
in
yeah.
And we go way over, it's all the same price.
Hopefully it won't rain.
Right, well, with the closed cap and, yeah, it
Yeah.
should be good either way. And that's all I have for me.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, moving on to communications, email. So we got the email from Peter Meyer, which I have a printout in case anyone didn't read it, but it's basically asking whether we're okay for him to do some cleanup around the perimeter of the ball field across the street from his house, other than the Japanese knotweed part. I think that would be great and would appreciate him doing it. Does anyone
I just
disagree
appreciate
with
that
him?
somebody steps forward like that, like our town.
Yeah, I mean, Peter does a lot, you know, I mean, obviously he mows around the church a lot, and he does a lot of that stuff, so I think
And he also
absolutely
had a
nice.
question about, maybe Mark knows, he wanted to know if there was any, how do you get rid of knotweed? Well, that was one of his questions
Yeah,
in his email.
it's a discussion we won't even get into.
That's probably gasoline.
We have copious knotweed in Newfane in the back of the
I
yoga
actually
studio, and I
think it
know
looks good
all
on
you
that
can do is mow.
side.
Uh-huh.
You just keep mowing to keep it from encroaching, that's basically all you
That's all
can
you
do.
can do.
No, they probably can't, because I know, I have neighbors who've cracked open stalks and poured all of the toxic stuff they can find, and it still doesn't kill it.
The only
Well,
thing that-
the roots
only
go
thing
out
I-
The roots
25
grow.
feet in any direction. and
Yeah.
Yeah,
Its
all
root
of
system
it,
is
it
unbelievable.
multiplies.
I finally
But it's
got rid of
delicious.
some of the ones we had, I
It
just
is.
keep breaking it off and it finally decided, okay.
If only people could eat more of it, enough of it. A little bit of chutney, knotweed chutney at a time is not enough to get rid of all that.
It is pretty when it blooms.
Yummy.
I think it looks good on that back wall of I think.
Okay, so I'll respond to Peter that we're very appreciative
Yeah,
and we would like for him to do that, is everyone in agreement?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Okay.
Dave, I just
Yeah,
wanted
sure.
to also say, I called town of Putney to see if they.
Oh,
would
right,
block-
yeah.
Block the
Oh, I
road
forgot
with
about
snow at any chance they get, that we have snow, and he said yes, they would.
Okay.
do that.
So just to fill people in, Johnny Swing mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago, if not longer, that he ran into somebody who was trying to come down Putney Mountain from the Putney side. They didn't get all the way down to Johnny's, but I think he might have been coming or going from his cabin, which is up on the unserviced part of Putney Mountain. But anyway, he pointed out that in years past, you know, we put barriers up for a while. There were times when Mark and Archie plowed gravel up at the top to stop people from thinking they can go down there. But Johnny made the suggestion that he was up there and he noticed that the town of Putney was plowing really well at the end of it. Basically, you know, could they not instead try to just create a barrier themselves when they're plowing to just make it a little less inviting for people to try to come down there? Somebody's still gonna try to do it, but they'll have to be a little bit more aggressive about it than making, because it does, if there's no barrier there, people who are, you know, GPS takes people over that
Yes, it
mountain.
does.
And people don't know what they're getting into until
Right.
they've gone too far, so. So Mark, I asked Mark if he could reach out to Putney about maybe trying to plow.
They sent my
Just
brother
be
over there with
make a bit of a barrier for us, maybe it would help. So that's great, Mark, thank you for that.
Not pleasant.
Okay, that is the only sort of separate
The old
email. Oh, no, sorry. One other email that you all have printouts for. So Daniel Dobson from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is going to discuss the pending marijuana legislation in a couple of weeks or next month at their meeting. Daniel put together kind of a summary document of past marijuana legislation and sort of where things are at, and provided it both to the Planning Commission and as well as us. So I'm going to put this, so please, in the next 2 weeks, read this document, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion about it at the next meeting, just as far as where things stand and whether we should start to form any view or not. And like I said, the Planning Commission is also going to meet and discuss it in February, so that you all have copies of that to review.
my father's turning over, he's leaving.
That is it for email. Mail, physical mail, we have something from V-Trans, which is the certificate of highway mileage that we need to sign annually. And Guy, you looked at this, right? We have to do this by
February 20th?
20th. Okay, so we'll hang on to this and we'll put that on the, we'll probably put it on the first meeting in February.
Yeah.
He's just
We also have, I think this is my certificate as being the name of the town health officer, so from the Vermont Department of Health, it's a copy of.
Big numbers.
I have mine on the wall, he's
Yeah, so
come
you
down.
need to see it, yeah. These are old things, right? Yeah, those are old things. We have probably multiple more notices about the fact that we, oh no, this is not a notice, sorry, I jumped to a conclusion. This is a letter from the Vermont Department of Health talking about the trainings that you noted in your email, that there are a couple of live trainings. All of their trainings, of course, are on Wednesdays during the day, so that's super convenient. I have big notes of some of those, although I don't actually get to any of them. Then there's something from the Vermont Department of Taxes.
That's the CLA notice.
So it's a notice of CLA change greater than 5%. And then does the lister, no, so this should go to the listers.
I think the
also
listers
for them to see, unless they.
have one, or will get one. And basically,
Yeah.
we went from 100.003 to 105.3, which means that we're valued a little more than we should be. And that usually reflects a lower educational tax rate for us, because we're overvalued. If it was under, it would increase our taxes.
Then there's something else from the Vermont Department of Taxes, which is about a 2019 equalization study, although this is actually addressed to you, Guy. Not to the select board, it's to-
Oh, is this?
interestingly. The envelope says it's to the select board, but the letter itself says town clerk, but either way. Yeah, so it's similar information about the CLA based on the study. And we have a,
Yeah, that was,
campaign gift request from the American Red Cross.
I just think that's a generic thing that
Yeah,
they
it
do,
is.
but I just wanted you to see.
Yeah, so it's sort of a generic request. Then we have to Dorothy Maggio, you want that, don't you? And myself, a newsletter,
Thank you anyway.
I assume from Senior Solutions,
Yep.
which I think we've also gotten electronically. These people send paper stuff and electronic stuff. So that is it for the regular mail. Then we'll pass pay orders around. There's a new format you'll notice for the payroll pay order because, and there's a little post-it note that Sarah put in, Samara has been working with her on it as well. There's some changes to the payroll system that mean moving forward, we're gonna have a slightly different format to our payroll pay warrants. And this is the first of those, so it just looks a little different. Let's talk a little bit about agenda for the 22nd. We will discuss road commissioner, hopefully with guests. We will revisit and presumably vote on the building commissioner description that we reviewed a couple weeks ago.
Should probably put Susie's down just in case I have anything information about whatever.
Sure.
Shouldn't be very much, hopefully. If we have any problems.
I am planning on going to the Wyndham Regional Commission's broadband project meeting on the 16th at Newbrook.
Yep.
I told them today that I would go, so we can discuss that. I know there are actions that they want us to take really quickly following it, which is mostly just appointing someone and passing a resolution saying we plan to participate in the project. So we may try to do all those things on the 22nd, probably, because they're anxious for it to happen quickly. We'll discuss the marijuana legislation summary that Daniel put together, just to see what people's thoughts are. I'll probably have an update on the town report. Maybe I will have started it at that point. Anything else anyone can think of?
I think we need to just kind of come up with a strategy for how we're gonna try and market, if we can, the change in town meeting time to make sure that we can get as much attendance as possible. Even if it's just quick strategies of, we're gonna try and go to I don't know, see if there's a local, an event or something we can have one of us present at and spread the, I don't know, something, nothing that's gonna cost money, but just how we're gonna try and make sure people know about the change. I know it's posted, I know it's on the website, but unfortunately, I don't know.
Everybody has a website.
Yeah, and I don't know that, I just think that we're making a change and there's a reason for it, and I think that if we can, if there's any strategies we can come up with, even if it's like, you know, something that we're all individually gonna do to try to reach out to people, or whatever we're gonna do to try and promote this change and make sure as many people know about it and encourage them to come.
How many does Julie get?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, is that something that we think needs to be discussed on the 22nd, or could it wait until February 5th?
I think if we wait until February 5th, we have less than a month to.
Yeah,
So, I mean, just a little,
it's fine.
if we
We
come
just
with
will
the
have-
idea,
Well,
yeah.
some of these should be fairly short, but we have quite a few things on the agenda for the 22nd, but let's talk about it.
Town meeting.
Yeah, we run out of time, we run out of time, but if we have it a moment, I think it'd be a good idea.
So, all right, so I'm just gonna put on a general thing about town meeting, and we can talk about how to, anything else for the 22nd, anyone can think of? Okay, so the payroll, what's we done with the other one? So people can focus.
Nothing but.
Does the town not have a Facebook page? Now, I feel a little odd suggesting this because I don't even have a Facebook page, but maybe we should make one.
The church has one,
I think
the Brookline.
when we have discussed it in the past, we have been pretty, there is a lot of liability that comes along with having any form of interactive social media platform, and I think we've generally thought that the risk far outweighs whatever potential benefit there would be to having something.
That's a good point, I can see that side of the argument.
Yeah, can you imagine?
We do
Bruce
have a
applying
social
those
media
comments on
policy.
social media?
You could be you could battle Trump on
We did pass a social
What was
media
that?
policy.
Yeah, it's on the website, on the ordinance and the procedures.
Not that I would argue we have any social media currently,
But there's a policy.
but there is a policy to know what we would need to do if we did have.
I guess I just brought it up because we were thinking about
How to get
agenda
people
and that
engaged.
piece, and Facebook works a lot, but,
Yeah,
but yeah.
and I guess, right, well, like you say, I mean, that doesn't mean that anybody individually who
Yeah.
has one
But
can't
my
make an
Facebook,
effort and that we
anybody-
can't, somebody can't create an event and have a bunch of people
Yeah.
share it across all the various
There
places
is a
that might
right
have.
way to you
Sure.
can put it
No,
on
it's a good,
that.
definitely. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve payroll warrant 2020-28 dated January 8th, 2020 in the amount of $1,086.46. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bruce. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving payroll warrant 2020-28 dated January 8th, 2020 in the amount of $1,086.46 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, payroll warrant's approved. Now I would like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable warrant 2020-27 dated January 8th, 2020 in the amount of $15,845.43. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Shelby. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving accounts payable warrant 2020-27 dated January 8th, 2020 in the amount of $15,845.43 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those are both passed. I would make a motion that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bruce. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned at 9:05.